I'm Kelsey.
I'm Cassie.
And I'm Nolan from SCP Weekly. We bring you news from on-site and off-site.
And we share your love for the creative community that surrounds the SCP Wiki.
Join us on Tuesdays for new episodes, wherever you listen to podcasts, or on YouTube at SCP Weekly.
Hey there, SCP fans. My name is Grigori Karpin, and this is Simply Creative People, the show about SCP creatives, be they authors, artists, or off-site content creators like YouTube and TikTok. We're focused on bridging the gap between various fans and serving as an introduction to different concepts and stories on the wiki. So, many welcomes to all, and let's get started. Hello, welcome back to Simply Creative People. My name is Grigori Karpin, and joined as always by my lovely co-host. Hello?
Yeah, I didn't hold my button down. I'm doesn't hold his button down, Harry Blank.
And we are joined again by our returning favorite, Plague. Introduce yourself. Oh, don't introduce yourself. Say hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm back.
plaguepjp, winner of the SCP 8000 contest.
That's right. We got
Goddamn right.
2/3 of this podcast have won a KCON. So that gives us some credibility, I think.
Yeah, hey, congratulations, Grigori.
Congratulations to me for getting 6th place. Yay!
You got higher than I did.
Yeah, yours got done a little bit dirty.
What happened?
Yeah, well, mine did last time. It came in barely in 10th. Okay, so we are going to be speaking today about 8000. We're actually going to do 2 episodes on the 8000 contest. This one is going to be focused on talking about articles that we really liked that feel like we didn't get enough attention. Something that I don't know if people were paying attention to my Twitter or other people's Twitters. A lot of articles that got submitted for the 8000 contest really got almost no attention. And I mean, a couple of the ones that we're going to talk about today didn't even come in at like plus 50. So, you know, I think there's always a situation where the ones in the lead get a lot more attention, but this time it was like dramatic. Everything after I would say the top 10 is like at least 100 to 150 to more votes behind. And it's just, you know, I know lots of people read and don't vote, so, you know, whatever. But it's the only indicator we have. And so I wanted to make sure that this first episode that we did coming back was to kind of shout out those things that didn't get enough attention.
It was a disaster, man. Some of these things got completely ignored. It was just infuriating.
A bunch of the ones, I think only a couple of the ones that we're talking about today are even hit 100, or even at 100 now. And these are all really terrific articles. So, like we've done before when we've done KCONs or when we did the OO ones, we each picked 3, and we're going to talk about them and kind of sell them. We're going to try and avoid spoiling too much of them, but, you know, we'll have to talk about them to some extent. So, we talked about this a little bit ahead of time, but the theme for 8000 contest was fantasy. And so one of the things that Plague had suggested that we talk about in terms of Creative Corner is how to write with a theme in mind. So you suggested it, so get going. No, yeah. Do you have anything to talk about?
So as our listeners probably know, a majority of contests will be centered around the theme. Team contest, the most recent team contest I believe was Department Con. So you make a new department. There was the cold post contest. You make a cold post. And then for 1000 contests, it's normally a genre theme. The last 2 contests before this one were not genre, they were nature and luck. But this time we got fantasy, which I was excited for. So writing with a theme in mind is easy. It's about how you can take any idea, pretty much any idea. You'll see in the articles we have here, we have an anomalous movie, we have a bunch of character pieces revolving around different styles or different structures. It's more just how you weave in these elements. So with something like luck we had at the last contest, a lot of articles focused on probability and general luck, unluckiness, so on and so forth, which a lot of the articles felt the same conceptually. But stories were taken in many different ways, which is what makes the SCP Wiki so unique. And with something like fantasy, where we have, what was it, 120 articles surviving?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. There was such a unique display of what could be written. Between myself, I wrote a character piece about my author avatar. Harry, in collaboration with a few other authors, wrote a heist. And Grigori wrote a character study about the Deva and SCP-1000. So the way I write about a theme is by taking an idea I like and seeing how I could weave certain elements into it. So I've wanted to write a sequel to my 001 proposal. That was my idea. And with fantasy, how do I evoke certain fantastical elements? There are cliches, a magical guide, a alternate location, a fantastical location. All of those things, if you bring them into your story in a natural way, and give you that fantastical element, and they make you a more unique article.
Yeah, I want to also kind of point out the way you should always look at, whatever sort of target, whatever sort of focus you're given, whether that's something that is commissioned of you, like a contracted thing, or you're working for, an employer that says to write this certain thing, or a contest like this that says, here's the theme. You can look for ways around doing something in the most straightforward fashion. Going into this contest, I was genuinely worried that there was just going to be a lot of like Lord of the Rings type stuff. Which, I'm not even talking about my personal feelings on Lord of the Rings. I'm just talking about the fact that I thought genuinely we were going to see a bunch of stuff that felt like D&D, and that was that. And we didn't see that. There were a few that kind of fit that, but not that many. Almost none of the ones that I really paid attention to felt like the most straightforward understanding of the tropes of fantasy. Like Plague was just saying, you could work in a trope. Mine starts off with a magic sword, quote unquote. It's very clearly not the traditional fantasy by any means. But there's also the aspect, think about what the word fantasy means. It means maybe sword and sorcery stuff, but it could mean horror, it could mean supernatural things, it could mean a fantasy, like your day-to-day understandings of the word fantasy. What is your fantasy about the situation? I didn't see that many take it in that direction, but it could have been, it could have been talking about romantic fantasy or daydreaming or, etc., etc. So, I think you look at a targeted theme for whatever it is you're doing, and don't find yourself constrained to the most straightforward understandings of that concept. There's always room to maneuver, especially in something as wide as fantasy. But even with luck, I remember when luck first came out, even I was worried, we're just going to see the same things over and over again. How many dice are we really going to need to read about? But that's not what happened, because you can think about the concept of luck or nature in 6,000 or mystery in 5,000. And, it's really wide open if you think about it.
Yeah, the point of a theme is to get your brain working. The point of the theme with the KCON is to establish a baseline bit of fairness that everybody's working towards one thing, and it's to write a story to a specific theme, so everybody's kind of on the same playing level. But the point of a theme in general is to give you a prompt, get your brain working, to go, take this specific neural avenue to your conclusion that is your story. And that's the most important part of it all the time, is just, what does it inspire in your head? What does it make you think of first? What is the best idea that comes up in your head that's related to the theme? A lot of people will go, I wanted to write this specific story, and hell or high water, I'm writing this specific story, and I'll just wedge the theme in, which can work, and a lot of really highly rated pieces do that. But for my 2 cents, it's always more fun to go, what's the story that I wouldn't have otherwise written that this theme makes me think about writing? Which is what happened in 7Con. The theme dropped, and my brain immediately seized on the idea that I ended up writing,
Right.
which I had not considered writing before. And it felt really good.
Yeah. For me, I always thought, I've mentioned this on other episodes, those lightning bolt moments. I love a theme for that reason, because I remember when fantasy first came out, I was slightly disappointed because I thought it was going to be something else. By the time I processed it, I was happy with it, but I was disappointed because I heard rumors that it was going to be Infinity, and I really liked that theme, and I had an idea in mind. And so when the actual contest was released and the theme was released and it was fantasy, I was disappointed. And I was sitting down, I was trying to figure out, what am I going to write for this? My idea does not work with the fantasy concept. Even if I twist it as much as possible, it might as well be a completely different thing. So a theme, like you guys were saying, really is helpful for giving you those moments of creativity. You have that bouncing off point. Like for me, I was literally just sitting down, how do I tie something in to one of the articles I'm most proud of, which that being my 001 proposal. I wanted something tied. That was my main thing. I want to tie something into that. So I'm sitting down, I'm thinking fantasy, and boom, the idea pops into my head. So if you take that theme and you genuinely think about it in as an abstract way as possible, and then you concentrate that down into its base elements, that's really where you'll find successful ideas. That's the reason why you'll see in the ideas form for any new authors, they're always asking you for an elevator pitch. That's supposed to be 1 to 2 sentences. You want to get your ideas as concentrated as possible, and that's where you build off from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's interesting about that lightning bolt moment that you mentioned is it can happen in so many different ways. For 7,000, it only happened because Dr. Sumerian said in chat that I should do this. And until then, I was like, I don't have anything. I don't know. And I'm envious of those people who have pre-existing drafts or ideas that they want to work into a KCON, because all my existing drafts are on the site. I don't think about I don't think about stories until I sit down to write them. Very rarely. I have, like I've mentioned before, I have a -J that I'll eventually get back to. But otherwise, I don't really have, other than a base understanding of things I wanted to do in my series before I finished it, or, maybe rough ideas of victim things or other anomalies I've got in my head. But for the most part, I don't have a pre-existing draft or an outlined idea that I'm going to adapt into a story. It's almost always me sitting there twiddling my thumbs,
Right.
And going, "Well, what's going?" And for this one, I was like, I've been feeling a little burned out these last few months, and I've been really wanting to focus in on. I mean, I've been working kind of a side writing gig, and I've been working a lot just for work, 50, 60 hours a week sometimes. And I was thinking about sitting this contest out. And then, something happened that had a pretty significant impact on me, and it rewoke certain traumatic things I have been, not burying, but not dealing with. And all of a sudden, this idea came to me. And it just was like, okay, well, I'll write about this, and I'll write about this, and I'll make it work for this emotional core theme that I wanted to tell. My story on its surface is remarkably not obvious as fantasy, I think. But, if you tell me the core aspects of this story, then it's obviously fantasy. So, I mean, it's all in how you look at it. And I think that the important thing to understand is don't constrain yourself. Don't sit there and go, okay, mystery means this. Because it doesn't. There's a lot of different aspects to mystery. Even in the boring ass world of police procedurals, we have seen interesting variety. Everything does not have to be a fucking Agatha Christie novel if you wanted to write something about mystery. And we saw that in 5,000. And that's true of, something that's a little bit harder to get your mind around, like nature or luck or whatever. It's funny because so far, 6 out of 8 of the big KCONs have been limited to themes that are genres. except for I guess the first was urban legend, but even that's kind of a genre. And we're basically out, unless we want to start redoing the old ones. And so I'm way more interested to see, because Nature and Luck produced some of my favorite articles on the goddamn site. Not just the ones I did for it or you guys did for it, but like other things. Without 7K, I wouldn't really have known who Asabi is. And I'm really glad I do now.
Kidding.
Anyway, so yeah, I think the important thing to keep in mind is, okay, I want to tell this kind of story. Whatever that thing is, whatever that theme is, you don't have to constrain yourself. Don't do that. People are going to do that for you. And that's why we see so often, you go to the fantasy aisle, you go to the horror aisle in your local bookstore, your local Barnes and Noble, and you're going to see kind of the same shit over and over again. I think less so in horror, because I think horror requires new ideas more often than not, because people get bored of the same old scares. But science fiction and fantasy will often have very similar concepts. There's very specific sort of lanes, but it could be almost anything.
Right. It's a lot of work in people's heads sometimes to realize that you don't have to write everything to be the very first interpretation of what you hear. And that's what you see when the contest drops every time. Mm-hmm. You'll immediately see everybody go, oh, every single article is going to be exactly the same. It's like, just if that's the first thing that comes into your mouth, do yourself a favor and just don't open your mouth and think for a little bit before you talk, because you're going to feel like an idiot eventually. But everybody just considers it so superficially, and they flip out. And even when people see it and they go, well, actually, this is a really constricting theme compared to some of the other ones. Like, yeah, that can be true, but stop for a while and just think about what kind of stories you might want to tell. Because I know we all want to tell the specific kind of tales we want to tell, but at the same time, there is something to be said for somebody basically forcing you to do something else, because it makes the channels in your brain you're not usually using get used. Yeah, and I mean, in some ways, I think it's almost useful that people's immediate reaction is all the articles are going to sound exactly the same. Because if you are thinking about writing an article, it probably inspires a certain amount of people going, oh, I got to step out of that thing I think everything's going to be. Right, exactly.
And it sort of ferments creativity in a lot of ways. Because as we've discussed before, why SCPs can be so varied is the restrictions of the format and the concepts of the world create this kind of perfect breeding ground for creativity. Like, restrictions, to an extent, push for creativity. How do we get this story? I mean, one of my favorite stories about vampires is a book that came out about 15 years ago called The Historian, which is a story about 3 generations of historians who are researching the real-life Dracula, like Vlad the Impaler, and then it turns out that Vlad the Impaler is actually Dracula, but not the Dracula from the novel by Bram Stoker, but an actual vampire in a much more creepy sort of way. So it's full of references to the concept of Bram Stoker's Dracula and full of things that like push it out of the way. And it becomes this like globe-trotting series of like people trying to look into old archives to find history, like first accounts of the actual Dracula and whether or not he or she was doing this or that. And it's so not, like when you hear that a story is about Dracula, your brain immediately starts thinking, a very specific thing like a cape and the silly corset. And this is nothing like that. I mean, Dracula spends maybe 50 pages on that book. He's barely in it. It's about this concept of hunting down ancient, writings and stuff like that. It feels almost more like a supernatural James Bond book.
There's a quote from Roundhouse, or a saying from Roundhouse that I always think of, always makes me laugh. It's that your idea doesn't have to be new, you just have to do it better than the last guy. So, like, let's say you have a cliche idea. Fantasy might inspire a cliche idea for you. As long as you write it in your own way and you try to make it as best as it possibly could be, people will see that effort. People will notice that you are doing something unique with a cliche idea. And that often leads to some of the most successful articles. Like, I'm reminded of Aerials from the 2022 anthology series last October, where it's a guy stuck in a place article.
Dude's article? Yeah, Aerials. Yeah,
3001. But it's taken in a different direction where we have this new perspective, these new characters. It's on a highway, and there's the same horror. It's the same horror of being stuck somewhere that you might not get out of a lot. But it's written in a unique way, and it became one of the most successful articles from that event. Or you have Hala Bolds from that contest as well. It's very similar to one that's about how when you die, you continue living, or you're still conscious.
Oh yeah,
I forget the title.
That's Dagon's article, right?
No, it's also Calabolds, because E is for eternity.
It's
the one he's talking about is E is for eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah, E is for eternity, and then there's 2718.
I'm interrupting. I got corrected for no reason. He's talking about one, and he said it's more like another one, but it's different.
Yeah.
So you only named one thing. He's thinking about camels.
Yeah, but
I'm comparing Alibris to 2718. What happens after?
Yeah.
Which is the Damarung one.
All right.
Like, those are both very similar ideas. It's being conscious after death. And both are taken in a very similar direction, but they're written in completely unique ways. So, if you have an idea that somebody else has written, there's 8,000 SCPs. Of course, people are going to have the same ideas.
Right.
But take it in a different direction. See how you could spin it. See how you could write it your own way. And that is the hallmark of a successful author, is taking a cliche idea and spinning it and making it potentially something new that nobody's ever read.
And that's actually the pointless little grumbling I just did there confirms this, because you were thinking of a different one. I was thinking of a third one that is like that, because Dagon's 5366 about the person who gets buried and then their loved one comes back, and every time they come back to the grave, the dead person in the grave is alive again and freaking out about it.
Yeah.
They're depending on how you approach it, you can take a very basic kernel of a concept and spin it in 100 different ways, and it will be different depending on who writes it, because everybody's brain is different and they will generate different things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually, was exactly tying into what you just said, which is the concept of, I have this idea, it's too much like this thing. But the reality is whoever wrote that thing that you think your idea is too close to had a very different set of experiences. Their family life was different. Maybe their orientation is different. Maybe their history is different. And they're going to come at that story in a different way. And maybe your thing feels a bit like this other thing, but that's superficial at best. When Victim first started, there was no end to people saying, "Oh, this is like Laugh is Fun." And I was like, "What is that?" And now I've read it and go, "Yeah, I can kind of see it, like in a superficial way. I can see that." But the reason it's different is because my perspective and the people like both of you who are writing for it are completely different than that person, which I forget who wrote that one. But the idea that your idea is too close to this other thing, don't, unless you are really trying to just mimic somebody else's thing. If you were going into the fantasy contest with, I want to write Lord of the Rings for SCP, then maybe your stuff will seem too derivative. But most likely, if your idea is too close to something else, that's not really a reason not to do it. And I'm speaking as somebody who is also intimidated by that. If I see something that's too close to something I want to do, sometimes I'm like, I'll forget it. And in reality, the organic nature of writing will make sure that your thing is different, as long as you're trying to tell something your own way. But,
Well, there were a few articles that did actually try to do Lord of the Rings for SCP, and I'm glad they did. So, I mean, it's good that everybody does all the possible solutions related to the problem.
And one of the titles referenced Lord of the Rings, but it has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings, which is funny.
Yeah, one of the ones that we're going to throw out a mention to later on.
Yeah. And then as a secondary thing, Plague, you kind of mentioned, and I think people don't realize this, but the stress of a contest is not the creative process usually. Although that can be stressful, and writing is creation in general is stressful. It's a very productive sort of stress, and you get to see a result as long as you finish what you started. I think something that we should talk about a little bit, because the both of you have very good experience. And being in the top 10 for the last 3 contests, I a little bit have that same experience, is the stress that comes with seeing a lot of attention on the thing you're doing. And even if your thing wasn't getting that much attention, the kind of stress that involves being in a contest. I think people, I don't especially previously, had ever considered the fact that, oh no, when I submit to a contest along the same theme that 30 or 40 or 100 other people have submitted to, I'm going to invariably compare myself and what they wrote to what I wrote, and how things are, oh, that one's getting so much more attention than mine, or, or whatever, however or even just, oh my God, so many people are reading my thing, and how freaky that is. Because just on myself, I got 6th place, and by the end of the contest, which was 30 days, it was at 250 with with like half a dozen downvotes. That's a crazy amount of attention. And your guys, and Harry's, yours in 7,000, and Plague's, yours this time, got way more attention than that. And like, people, I think, people always want to think about, oh, it'd be so great to be a success. And it is, don't get me wrong, it's nice. But it's also like really stressful to get this sort of attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I first off, thank you to everybody who read my article, whether you downvoted for valid reasons, upvoted it because you liked to left a comment, etc. I appreciate it. I'm very thankful I won this contest. I'm going to preface everything I said. This fucking sucked. This was one of the worst months of my life. Yeah. I lost so much sleep.
I'm sure.
I didn't think that this could be that stressful. It made me never want to participate in a contest ever again. I checked IMN. So, if for those who were around for the 6,000 contest, there was a artificial feud between the 2 top authors that led to a bombing of downvotes on the winning entry, which was Render House's piece. This time, for 8,000 contest, I experienced that, but between 2 other authors. By the end of the contest, I had over 85 downvotes with
ridiculous.
I believe 30, maybe 40 of them having to be written off. I went from my ending score on the website, on the wiki, was plus 385. The adjusted score was plus 427. That sucked. The stress I experienced from this contest was astronomical. Like I said, I lost sleep. And it ruined it for me, because I should be happy that 300, 400, 500 people, 500 actual living, some of them weren't real accounts. We'll call it 400. Yeah, we'll call 400 actual living, breathing people took the time, read my thing, and voted on it, and potentially even left a comment. That is insane. I don't even know 500 people in real life. The fact that 500 people took out that time and had an account and decided that this was the people that they wanted to win, I appreciate that immensely. But I couldn't really focus on that because the entire contest was gamed the entire time. I can rant, and I don't want to rant. So I would say, if you're going to enter a contest, maybe leave the internet if you start doing well. I don't know. It's hard. It was very hard for me because I took a short break, and then I took a longer break. In between, I went kind of nuts. My competition also went nuts. It wasn't fun. I wish it was fun, because I saw like 7,000 for me. I got in the top 10. It was so much fun. I was in a minor placement battle between Ori Teeth and Tufto for 4th and 5th place. I ended up losing and getting into 6th, and I was fine with that. 6K was my first K contest. I got in 11th place, and I couldn't have been happier. There's no reason that me getting in first shouldn't feel as good as me getting into 6th or getting into 11th place. So, I would say, if you try to focus on, if you are going to enter a contest of this magnitude, whether it be on the SCP Wiki or some other website that does something similar, try to focus on the fact that people are actively enjoying your article, because that makes it better. I was reading every positive comment. I didn't really get that many negative comments.
I mean, I
Anyways.
think even if you hadn't had that experience, it would have been pretty stressful because Harry, you didn't really have that experience, and I know you were losing your shit.
Yeah, I'm kind of pissed off at Plague, honestly, because he took away one of my favorite things to talk about. Because I would occasionally bring it up whenever people would talk about it, how I ground my teeth together and actually injured my jaw. I was so freaked out and upset and worried and everything, and it's now in bad taste to even bring it up because that contest was yeah, it is super stressful, but that was a fucking cakewalk compared to what you just had.
Yeah, but I think the subject is important to like to.
I don't want to minimize anybody's frustration.
Yeah.
Contests are really interesting because the wiki will have multiple contests a year, and the winning prize is normally like a feature on the front page, and like that's fine. I'm more than willing. Like I've entered contests. This is my first contest I've won. I've ended up in third and second place in a majority of contests I've won. Like, I'd be upset, whatever. But like it wasn't to the point of this. The contest I'm winning is this stressful, and I would say like there's a reason it's that way. It's because there have only been 8 of these slots available. It's a very sought after prize.
Right.
It's a crowning achievement for many people. Everybody wants it. You're not entering this contest for bragging rights and a front page feature. You're entering this contest literally to put yourself down in SCP Wiki history.
Right.
You are guaranteed a plus 1,000 upvoted article. That is a guarantee, pretty much. Like you're put down, like I said, put down in that history, and it's a very sought after prize. And being able to be in that position, I'm very grateful for, and I'm glad that I'm able to say that I win one of these slots. It's validated every feeling I've had it's invalidated every awful feeling I've had about myself as a writer.
Good.
But the journey to it was not fun. So if you're in this position, take care of your mental health. Have somebody around you to ground you. I would lock my phone in the room, and I would go watch like hockey with my friends for hours on end, just to keep my mind off of it. So find something that doesn't involve the internet, where you don't have immediate access to open up a tab and reloading a page, because you will drive yourself insane.
Absolutely, you will.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't won one of these contests, and I just want to talk about how stressful it has been for me from a different perspective, so that you guys understand when you're listening that if you think about entering a contest, this is not to tell you not to do it, by the way. Just like be warned ahead of time so that maybe you have a healthier reaction than maybe we have had before. Even, and I've been lucky enough to be in the top 10 for every KCON entry that I've entered, so obviously that's relatively pretty good position to be in. I'm not going to pretend like that's not. But something that has bothered me, even all the way back to like the romance contest that we did, what was that, 2021?
A million years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is this, and I do not, I got in second on that contest, and there's no hate towards Rallison who won that contest. It's more about the idea, not even the idea, but the petty nature of comparing yourself to other people. I know for a fact that I am capable of writing things that are worthy of attention. I think the thing that I wrote this time was worthy of a KCON slot. I was not bitter this time, but that's because I learned a different way to handle it. But in 7,000, I had a really hard time. I'm going to sound petty, but I had a really hard time because I spent just a tremendous amount of time on what turned into 7007. Not only did I write it, but I edited and had a voice actor record lines to do like 3 different video segments in it, which took hours and hours of time. I have so much more respect for people that do video editing, and those were like shitty. Somebody just learning how to do video editing. I don't pretend to know it very well at all, and it took so much time and effort. But the thing that you have to keep in mind and try your best to do, like Plague was saying, was focus on the positive, because the negative is just this downward fucking spiral. I can look at what my contest entry this time did. And I can compare it to the next one up or the next one beyond that. For example, I came in 6th, and 5th was pretty similar to me. But everything above that had votes that were significantly more in number. And the thing that you can... And first of all, I don't think that's right. I think it's wrong that people show up, look at the top 3, only read those, only vote on those, and say go good night. I think that's bullshit. I
hope you feel bad if you did that. Unless you did it because you had no time, literally no time. No time.
I work 50 hours a week. I read and voted on 50 fucking articles. Bullshit. If I have enough time, unless you are literally working 100 hours a week, fuck off. You have time, and especially if you participated.
Yeah, I'll do an old man complaint because it's a sideways thing of this. I would have a thing that my students, when I was teaching university, would sometimes do, where they would say they didn't have time to work on something, and maybe some of them were working like all day long jobs to pay for their tuition or whatever. However, we're in Canada, so that's less likely. Some of them. But most of them, what they mean when they say they didn't have time is that they didn't choose to spend their time on that. So a lot of the time when people are saying, like, I didn't have time to read a lot of these Wiki articles, it's like, what you mean is you chose not to spend your time on that, and you still want that validated as, like, contributing.
Yeah,
and you didn't. Maybe you will later. Maybe you have before. This time, you didn't contribute to the community. If you just read the top 1 or 2, you did nothing for us. You got this for free. You're kind of stealing.
Yeah, there's a problem of... I was talking about this because currently, if any of you listeners are not involved with like SCP Wiki politics, there's an ongoing... I'm not sure if it's finished yet, but there was a discussion about how do we make sure that something like what I experienced doesn't happen. I'll go more in depth on what happened. So, like I insinuated, my article was downvote bombed to a ridiculous degree, along with another one of my competitors, Jay Dune. His was also bombed.
Yeah.
Like I said, 85 downvotes on something that was... I've written controversial articles. This was not a controversial article.
Not at all.
Nope.
But the arguments are like, the problem is, how do we solve this? How do we make sure that another author doesn't get downvote bombed because somebody wants somebody else to win? And for me, like, solving the issue of upvotes is such a problem because you don't want to detract away from the competitiveness of this contest. If I wasn't bombed like I was, I would have enjoyed this competition, the rivalries that developed there. I had a rivalry with one of my best friends on the site for this contest, and it would have been so much fun if not for these malicious actors. And I want to retain that spirit, and there's no way to force that with any policy.
Yeah, no.
So for me, I think the issue is you cannot artificially create word of mouth. The top 3 ended up in the 300s solely because of word of mouth of this, like, fight for first place. And that's why you see such a difference between the top 3, between the top 3 and the top 5, and then the top 5 between the top 10, and so on. And there's no artificial way of creating that, so it's a rock and a hard place situation where you might eliminate the competition of a contest to save people's mental health, which I'm all for. But at the same time, part of me wants that competition. I just don't want it to be malicious, and there's no real way of solving that.
Yeah,
and the way... Go ahead, Gregory.
I don't want to get too far off what my topic is. So, like, I think you're right, obviously, and people should take voting more seriously. I think if you want to participate in a contest, I think you should take the time to read more stuff. I think more people need to focus less on success with Social Security, with SCP, because we do this so often where the big showstoppers are the ones that get all the attention. We, meaning the community. I don't do that. That's the whole point of this goddamn show. But so frequent, and the reason it is because I have felt so frequently that my stuff has gotten ignored. Now, I think that's stupid now that I think about it in relative sense, because let's face it, I'm a top 50 author. I think I'm like the 41st or something now. So that's not true, obviously. Obviously, a lot of people read my stuff. But I want to get a little bit back to the concept of how to manage the participation without constantly ripping yourself up or wondering why nobody's reading my thing or that's not as good as mine. It's going to be impossible to completely avoid those feelings unless you totally tune out and just step away from the computer for a month. Mm-hmm. But this time, as opposed to 6,000, as opposed to 7,000, especially 7,000, because I was really pretty disappointed with how mine did. Even though it got top 10, and that's ridiculous. There are 150 other people that would have gladly killed somebody to get my thing. I get it, and I'm not trying to be petty. But it's impossible for me because I'm an insecure person, and I can't sound very confident, and I am, but I also constantly compare my stuff to other stuff. Is to try very hard to focus in on the positive. And I don't mean that in some hippy-dippy sort of way. This time, I wrote, and we'll talk about it on the other episode. We'll talk about all three of ours on the other episode. But this time I wrote something that was really, really personal, the way that Plagues wrote something really, really personal. And I tried really hard and then succeeded, which was fucking phenomenal, to just focus in on the reviews, to focus in on the fact that my comment section is a who's who of SCP authors that I greatly respect, saying these stunning fucking reviews to my shit. And it, Radiker in her comment, and I love Radiker. I love Radiker's articles. I love her podcast. Radiker said that my article made her cry. And I was just like, this is what I need to focus on. And I then supplemented that a little bit with trying to shout out other articles. So I tried really hard not to constantly reload my page and instead spend that extra time to read at least one article a day and then go on Twitter and say why I think this one mattered and write a blurb about it. And that, I'm not saying everyone should do that, but that would be great though. But I do really think that it's hard. It's really difficult, even if you're not in top 10. I assume this happens to a lot of people, because when my stuff never got attention, I would constantly look at new things that came on the wiki that got plus 100, plus 200, whatever, and go my thing's as good as that. Why isn't my thing getting that much attention? And you're right, there's no way to artificially create that sort of recognition. The only way that worked out for me in the long run, and Plague and Harry, is by consistently putting out things and you slowly tack on an audience and whatever. But, really focusing or trying to focus in on your own mental health means, I think, at least for some people that have a similar perspective to mine, to try really hard to stop worrying about how your thing is doing in comparison to others. I don't enjoy competition because I want to fucking win. And it's difficult because I'm also... This is going to sound very entitled. Most things in life that I have tried to do are very hard, but I do very well in them. And so when it becomes a thing of how do I get more attention on this fantasy story I wrote, it has nothing to do with how smart I am or how charismatic I am. That's not really going to make a difference. And so, I kind of beat myself up a little bit and wonder why the fuck, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with them that they want to read this thing and not mine? And I was only able to avoid that this time by really, really focusing on, I don't know, there's 60 comments or something on mine, and just being okay, I'm just gonna, every time I'm feeling pretty shitty about things, I'm going to look into the other articles that barely have plus 30 and realize mine is, over 150 or over at the end it was 250. I'd never done anything except for, I guess, 6,500 probably got pretty close to that. But I had never done anything on my own that had gotten that much attention in 30 days. So it was just a constant reminding of myself of it's all relative. Somebody out there wrote something really cool and is barely getting attention. And that's part of what today's episode is about too, if we ever get to it. 45 minutes in.
Before we finish up, I think the problem is the SCP Wiki is a large community, but it's also a very small community, especially among the authors.
Yeah.
And I think for me, there was an element of where I selfishly thought that I deserved this win. Like I said, I've participated in majority of the Wiki's contests since I've joined, and I've never won a single one. And like there's that element of comparison. All of my friends, majority of my friends have won a contest or have done better than me. And I looked at this contest and I wrote something and I invested in commissioned art for it. And I got into this mindset, I deserve to win this contest. I deserve it. And I think that's something that a majority of people could experience or do experience when entering these contests. I had a very similar feeling entering the 7,000 contest. It was immediately dashed when Harry posted. Because I remember reading Harry's sandbox being like, this is pretty solid. And then I saw what he posted and I read it and I was like, oh, this guy's winning. Same thing happened when Rounderhouse posted for 6,000. Like, getting that chance really validated the feelings of, I deserve it, this is my time, this is fated. Like, I drove myself nuts. I genuinely drove myself crazy. Don't do that. Focus on the positives. Nobody deserves anything. It could be the 9,000 contest and a 1,000-word short-form article could win. And for whatever reason, the site, readership, decided that article deserves to win. And like it or not, that article won the contest. I didn't deserve this win. I got it because people decided to read my thing and upvote it. Harry didn't deserve his win. He got it because people decided to read his thing and they upvoted it. So go into these
and
contests.
And because Lord Zunu did a advertising.
That's go into these contests. Don't focus on I want to win. Focus on writing the best piece you could possibly write, because that will be remembered. Still to this day, articles from 5,000 contests, 6,000 contests, the 4,000 contests, the 3,000 contests. All of those articles are thought of because they were written well, not because somebody thought they deserved to win.
I think it's really easy to do those negative things I was talking about earlier, and whatever you have to do to try and get your mindset out of that, focus in on what story it is that you wanted to tell and whether or not it's resonating with people. It really sucks for people like the people we're going to talk about today who didn't even get plus 100 in a contest that had people getting up to 250 to 350 or 4 because there wasn't enough attention to spread around. And I think there was a lot of people were like, oh, so many of these are long. And this contest was remarkable for that. There was a lot of entries that were far, I'm going to be a little bit critical, were too long. Almost all the articles I read felt bloated. There are exceptions.
The top 3 were less than like 2,000 words.
Yeah, I think we are in quite a lot of danger of getting to a point where the contest will automatically be won by something short. And I thought we were going to be there this time, and I was prepared to be angry at everyone for months. So I was very glad when you won.
I do think that people going into the contest, my personal feeling, and this is not objectively true and people disagree, but I think that there needs to be more attention to people that want to write SCPs about trimming the fat. Because there is this contest, man, there were a lot of articles. I just stopped judging people for it because so many of them caused the sin that I was like, well, I'm not going to downvote this because it's too long. Feels long. Not like there's an arbitrary length that's too long, but like there are articles that were like, oh my God, I just want to skim this. A lot of them. Even ones I thought were very good. And I think people need to start thinking about how to kill your fucking darlings, because guess what? If you want to write a story that matters to somebody, if they get to a part and they go, ugh, I'm just saying, if consistently people are telling you to trim stuff and you decide, forget it, I'm gonna do it anyway, just this is flash fiction. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be anything too long, and I get that it's fucking ironic that I, as one of the authors of 6,500, are saying this, but our thing was meant to be read in pieces. It was not a 20,000 word read at once. Some people were crazy enough to read it straight through, but it's 96,000 words. It's all in how your thing is meant to be read. And if you can't pause because there's no bookmarks or anything. I think it needs to be considered, but whatever.
Yeah.
The point is that you look at the thing that you want to tell, and whether or not it resonates with people, and try to focus on that, because everything else is fucking madness.
Mm-hmm.
But
There's
let's
an expectation in K contests. I'm sorry, do you want me to skip over this point?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. There's an expectation in K contests, and I believe I've mentioned this in the 7,000 episode. You want authors write long solely because it's 1,000 contest.
Yeah.
I mention my first article all the time, which makes an appearance in my 001 proposal, the Festival of Florence, the former SCP-5770. That was my first article ever, and it was 20,000 words. It got to plus 24 in a year and a half. I expected that it would be the best thing people ever read, solely because I had put that effort into its length. If your article is meant to be long, it will be long. Like 6,500, that was meant to be long because the story needed to be told over that time. My article was 9,000 words. SCP-8000 was 9,000 words. I could have gone longer. I could have trimmed a little. I don't think I could have trimmed a little bit. I definitely could have gone longer, but I think the length I had worked as much as it possibly could. If you can write something in 200 words, and you can extend it out to 1,000 words, but it works best as 200 words, write it as 200 words.
Nothing works better as 200 words.
But you can consolidate that space.
Yes.
Readers will thank you. You will, and it makes you a better writer because you understand how length works in an article.
Yeah, and if you are hitting the same tonal point over and over again, we fucking get it. There are a lot of articles that I could name that I'm not, because we're not going to be a negative podcast, that were in this contest or in other places that were just like, we get it. We get it. Why did you include this scene? Because it was cool? This isn't a 5-season television show. But whatever. The point is just really focusing on what's necessary to tell your story. I desperately wanted to make something that was 5,000 words, but I couldn't make that work for this story to get the pacing right, and I was mercenary with the trimming on this article for 8140, which is what I ended up getting. You could be tougher on yourself. Oh, I like this scene. Well, yeah, you like it, but does it serve a purpose? Don't just tell yourself to keep something because you thought it was cool and that was the original. The whole idea of writing is to fucking murder. Mm-hmm. Take your characters.
I love.
What?
I'm sorry, Corey, go ahead.
No. It's fine. You're just talking about a scene.
I had a scene I loved that I wrote where it was like this mobile task force log, and it was hilarious. But it didn't do anything for my story, so I took it out. Maybe I'll use it for something else. But it was one of my favorite things I've written for that piece. But I had to take it out because it just didn't work for the story.
Yeah. Take it with a grain of salt. It's very ironic and maybe even hypocritical of me to say that. But 6,500 was not meant to be read as, a 96,001 sitting sort of reading. And it didn't start off that long either. We extended it, which is insane in its own thing. Anyway, all right. So I think we basically understand what a KCON is. I think we're going to get rid of this whole what is a KCON thing. Everybody should probably understand.
Yeah, fuck it.
Let's start talking about these articles. So we each picked 3. We're going to start with Plague's, one of Plague's picks, which is, if he hadn't picked it, I would have picked it, which is 8,900, The Hecatomb by It's a Bad Idea, or Isabi, which is mostly what I'm going to say. So, Plague, you want to give the elevator pitch about why you picked this one?
Yeah, this is a really, really good article. Isabi always writes very well. Isabi's one of my favorite authors.
100%.
Just because they're writing Lovecraftian horror
in a totally different way. It's not Lovecraftian and typically we use that term. Sorry to cut you off. Typically we say Lovecraftian and you think, oh, it's going to be like Cthulhu. No. It's just like it keeps the spirit of the Lovecraftian eldritch horror and does totally different things with it. But anyway, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So this is an article that presents you with just a bunch of pictures, a level 5 warning, and you get down to a collapsible. And it's this epistolary SCP document about this skull with a fire inside of its head. That's it. It's a human skull, and there's a burning flame inside of the cranium where the brain is supposed to be. And you basically follow this slow descent into madness that the Foundation starts succumbing to because this thing is so fucked up and manipulates them. And I can't describe it and do it justice because it's such a unique way of presenting a story. But it's also like going back to the point on an old idea in a new way. Mm-hmm. This is an old idea in a new way. Mm-hmm. It's an object that manipulates people and controls people, but it's presented in this way where it feels totally new. The characters are believable. The horror and the tension buildup is great. I won't spoil the ending, but the ending, the stingers of that ending, is so hard. It is such a wonderful piece. It might be my favorite from this contest, outside of the top 10. It is... Isabi wrote my favorite thing from 7000 with A Place to Drown In.
100%.
And this is... Yep. I told Isabi, I don't think this reaches that height, but my god, is it good. I recommend that everybody reads this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fun thing about this one is the building of tension, because it starts off and it seems pretty ordinary. Like, I genuinely thought, Asabi's going for a different kind of thing. It's not going to be the weird religious awe sort of horror. We're not going to have some eldritch, unknowable thing, because it doesn't start off that way. It starts off with this very ordinary thing. A mobile task force is hearing about people disappearing and being burned alive, and they go and you kind of search out this area in Syria. I think it's Syria. And they find this abandoned building, and at the center of the abandoned building is this skull that has a fire in the middle of it because part of the skull has been cut away. And they take it, because obviously it's anomalous, so they take it with them, and they start noticing that the containment chamber is in danger of actually melting. Like, the pipes are actually going to melt around it. So they've got to make this heavy, intense, furnace level, resistant to heat containment chamber. And what Plague said, it's like this slow descent into madness because it starts off pretty simple. People looking at it and going, oh, this thing acts weird, and there's increases in the temperature. We're not sure why. And somebody keeps trying to break into the file, and somebody tries to break into the containment chamber to burn papers, and we don't know why. So let's have an interview with that person. And that even doesn't show its true colors right away. But pretty much starting from there, which is about a quarter into the article, you start seeing, oh no, this isn't a Asabi article like I thought. It's very restrained, and it slowly builds. Not slowly, because it's not that long of an article, and it's really well paced, but it feels like this slow burn until you get to the point where it's just fucking madness, and whatever has happened got so intensely bad, the site's gone. The reason you have to... The opening of the article are just these images, all these religious images that have to do with fire. And the description is blank, and the conprocs are blank, and then you have to go all the way down to the bottom of the page to open up this collapsible that says, do you want to try and restore the file? And all you can get out of it are these exchanges, these emails, and these interviews. Because most of the file's gone, because I would say at the end of this, the fucking site is gone because everything went so crazy. And yeah, I don't want to give away the ending either, because honestly, it's hard to even give away because it's so unique. In my comments, I even said I would give anything to know what that fill in the blank was saying, because there's bits of dialogue that are cut out, and it perfectly encapsulates the idea of eldritch horror without really going over any of the tropes, because we never really get to see anything from this thing's perspective. The thing that I think my favorite part of it is realizing that Asabi is sort of establishing a pantheon, because the water, the drowning one, and now the burning one. And it's if you were to tell me I want to write a series of SCPs about these gods that are elemental, like water and fire, I would just be snore. I don't give a shit. That just sounds like the most basic bitch, but it's not. It's incredible. Yeah.
What's great about it is that this series that he's developing, I critique
Very
his
loosely.
articles a lot.
Very loose series.
That's what it is. They're very, very loosely connected. He has a through line of existential horror ideas beyond comprehension that are above humanity, that humanity is trying to understand. And that's what works so well for this one, because we don't, for A Place to Drown, we get an idea of the location, what's going on, and slowly we understand what is happening to these people. But for this, like you said, there's no containment procedures, there's no description. We genuinely have no idea what this thing is. We do not know. And even by the end of the article, we do not have a clear picture, because that information is kept away from us because of what happened to this site and universe, and because it builds up that horror and that idea of unknowingness more from the reader's perspective.
The realization that I had towards the end that the reason we didn't have conprocs or descriptions was because they were burned. It just made me go, oh my god!
That's a masterwork. It genuinely is a masterwork.
Yeah,
I love
there's
Wasabi stuff. I always love it. It's always so good.
Sorry, we've been talking a lot. Harry, you talk.
Well, as soon as I started really getting into it, realized that this was going to be the equivalent of A Place to Drown in the last contest. I was simultaneously. Oh wait, I've got to. Now that I'm holding my button down, I gotta do that because it's just been killing me that I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I got so mad because when I read it, it was at we were probably like a week in when I read it, and it was at plus 20. I think I just flipped my shit. I was so mad. I was like, why isn't anybody reading this? It's so good. And he was so good last time, so you should fucking know by now. And I just went telling everybody I could find, just read this. Put it on Twitter, read this. And then other people were doing that as well, going, read this one. And then people did, and it started going up. But why did we have to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's still
so cleverly written.
It's at 93. Which is great. I mean, I'm not saying that that's
it's still way lower than it should be. Yeah,
but it's this is, and I think in a couple of years people are going to be like, oh, remember when Asabi stuff didn't really get that much attention? Because I just don't understand how Asabi stuff hasn't just blown the fuck up. Because this should be our number one author. I'm sorry, it just
this is classic SCP horror.
Oh yeah,
it's in the modern way. It's a new way. This is classic SCP horror. This is what the offsite community complains that they don't see anymore.
I know.
This is exactly what
it's an expansion.
looked for.
It's an expansion of the thing that's going on in 035. The whole premise of that one is this thing really sucks, and the longer we keep it here, the more horrible shit we have to deal with until eventually we can't. Yeah. But it takes that and it actually makes that scary instead of just.
You know why
just because it's old.
Why Asabi stuff really works, even though it's these concepts that we've seen a bunch of times, because we have all these stories from Lovecraft himself, from in Warhammer 40k, in all these different concepts where looking at said thing makes you crazy. All of those stories, for the most part, tell you that. Right? Maybe you get a little bit of taste from some of Lovecraft stuff about somebody losing their shit, but he had a remarkably small imagination for what actually going mad feels like.
Right.
Asabi never tells us this thing is gonna make you crazy. Asabi fucking shows us. And there's always this moment, whether it's A Place to Drown, M is for Moonlight, or M is for Moon, or this one, the Hecatomb, where I go, oh. This is not a reliable person to believe in.
Yeah,
they're
when his
full on
start talking
crazy talk.
Crazy.
Yeah.
When his people start talking crazy, it is so crazy, and it is always this just rapture that they describe for the horror that they're interested in.
I have spent time around psychotics. I'm not saying that as a pejorative. I'm saying people that have psychosis and delusions because of the job I used to do, which was a disability advocate. I had lots of clients who had significant mental disturbances. I'm not talking about depression. I'm not talking about ADHD. I'm talking about not fully connected to the real world, where the delusions are constantly fighting to take over. Talking to some of them at their worst moments is like reading some of this dialogue. where you just go, oh, this person is not here. I don't mean they're dumb. I don't mean, oh, they're crazy. I mean, oh my God, what are they tapping into that the people around them don't know? There's so much between the lines when you get one of these characters in Asabi's works that they come to these conclusions, and you're just supposed to be like, oh, well, they're nuts, or they're listening to some, eldritch being or something like that. But Asabi has such a wonderful way of expressing that and revealing unreliable information, but reliable enough that you're supposed to be paying attention to it. It's that first researcher that gets, detained because he's trying to break into burned papers is a great example. He starts revealing stuff that is very telling about what's happening, but you can discount it. But you should, in Asabi's work, you should really be paying attention to people that seem to have lost it, because there's lots of clues of what's going on in their dialogue.
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh, I mean, and I would want for more Asabi stuff more frequently, but clearly the pacing that Asabi has set up for releasing things, it works. So do it as much as you need to, but I can't. I am always constantly like, okay, show me something else.
The recent article as well, Black Mountain Transmitter, I believe is the title. I featured it on the front page because it was at plus 20 after a week, and I was like, my God, how does this happen? So I really do hope that people do read more of Asabi's articles. They are expertly crafted. It is horror for horror fans. It's horror for SCP fans. You will enjoy it. Please, if you're going to read anything, read everything that we talk about here, but definitely read this one.
Yeah, it's like, I think we were talking about Tufto's 001 last time you were on, and me saying that I feel bad for people that don't read SCP because they've never experienced Tufto's writing. And I feel similarly about Asabi or Big Sloth on my face. It's just, God, just some of these people are very much worth your investment. They're telling stories you don't see other places. Asabi and Tufto and many other people that tell really unique stories, you're just not going to see anywhere else. You're not going to find it in fantasy or in horror media typically. This is really original stuff, even though we're describing it in terms like Lovecraftian. It doesn't feel like a Lovecraft story at all. But I think we should probably keep moving.
Well, since you guys kept interrupting me, though, I'm gonna get one. Well, you weren't interrupting me, but you kept talking, and I didn't have a chance because you guys loved it so much that I didn't have a chance to say how much I loved it, which is because it's so great. The one thing I just want to point out is the balls on this one, because this one starts off with the most obvious idiots who don't know what's going on will downvote it thing I have ever seen on an English article. Yeah. It looks like it's not done.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it's all been basically destroyed by this horrible anomaly. It says special containment procedures, and then there's nothing. And you have to scroll down to see why there's nothing. And the absolute confidence and balls to do that and go, even the people who don't get it and downvote it because they're too stupid to even scroll are not going to be able to hurt this, because I know I did this right. And I know it's the right decision for the story. It's bold. He's always bold.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it works. So read Asabi.
But speaking of remarkably underrated things, let's talk about SCP-8682, which is Castromancy by Famine Pulse.
Two very different possibilities.
Yeah. One is the magic of Fidel Castro, and one is the catastrophe magic. So, I mean, you've heard me talk about famine before on this podcast. Famine stuff, I don't understand how this happened. But the current readers of SCP are apparently unaware of Famine Pulse. Because he'll post things once or twice a year, and I see them barely get 50. And I am constantly in awe of the weird ass shit that he writes. And I mean, it doesn't hurt that I talk to him on a daily basis and we're friends. But I don't... chatting with him, you would never expect to see the weirdness that he puts on the page. It's fucking brilliant. I think we talked about Sweat Mother before. We've talked about the egregore on the podcast before. Articles that have not gotten a tremendous amount of attention, and this is no different. This is at plus 44. And if you've ever listened to me recommend anything before, motherfucker, please read this article. This is like, what if David Lynch wrote and directed an episodic drama about the SCP Wiki? Because this is not Famine's typical, so confusing and bizarre concept that you walk away, lost as to what happened, but kind of moved and weirded out. This is a straightforward story told in the weirdest way possible. It's not even told in a weird way. It's pretty straightforward. It's the things that happen are so off-putting. Because the anomaly here is a calcified 11-week-old fetus. Another fetus. Way to go, Famine. With a sunken head, which exhibits... Oh, I'm not going to say that. Basically, the head is shrunken down into its torso. Like the thoracic spine is bent so completely that its shoulder blades are almost above the top of its head. And there's this really creepy image that Famine drew and painted.
Oh my god, they did?
Yeah. This picture is... All the art in this is Famine created. And it's all weird as fuck. Some of it's a little too small. I would like to tell him to make it bigger, because the ones later on are really weird. And if they blew it up, I think people would be like, whoa. So there's this calcified fetus, and it's contained in this polymer womb with an artificial placenta. And it at first was filled up with this sort of artificial nutrient type thing, but eventually that ran out and it calcified. But honestly, none of that fucking matters. That's just tone setting. Hey, let's start off with a creepy calcified fucking dead baby. Because the anomaly is found by this agent who is the most walking trash fire of a train wreck I've ever seen in my life. There's a dialogue. So cut throughout this article are these little moments where it's like an after action report, but it's very clearly disciplinary in tone, because Agent Breen, which is a wonderful Half-Life reference, Agent Breen is just a fucking the least professional motherfucker on the planet, because he admits to being on psychedelics, and the doctor is interviewing him is, you weren't drunk? You were on psychedelics? No, I was also drunk. So he's sent to pick up this anomaly and transport it to a nearby site. And he does so drunk and strung out on psychedelics. So, and that's just the beginning of his unprofessional behavior. He's just the most flawed protagonist ever. And while he's transporting this, he is accosted by this weird spine winged snake creature that is capable of shooting guns, who is also driving a white van. I think he's driving a black van, sorry. And they're fighting it out on this city street, which draws the attention of local police. And then we start getting the attention, the perspective of the local police officer. And this just turns into, what if Law and Order SVU was about SCPs? It's just there's interrogation records. There's a cops trying to run down a runaway, a high-speed car chase. This is it. When you describe it in just a couple sentences, it's oh, okay, I know what that is. No, you don't. Because it just gets so fucking weird. There's a bit later on where it's talking about these things that are, sentient spinal columns, that if you are in possession of it, or sapient or whatever, if you're in possession of it, you can survive really outlandishly dangerous things. It almost works like the opposite of Weddle's thing, that it makes you so lucky that you run into a room full of people shooting guns and you'll somehow, all the gunshots will miss you, sort of situations. And he uses that as an excuse to tell more and more outlandish, action sequences, but as if written by David Lynch. That's too reductive, but I can't think of another way to try and sell this. It's
Yeah,
just
for me.
Go ahead.
Quickly. I interrupted you.
No, whatever. Go.
Yeah, for me, the way I kind of like what this really reminded me of was one of those things, like those weird short films
Yeah.
you'd catch on Adult Swim on a random
Yes.
like Wednesday night at 3 a.m. It's like a Too Many Cooks where
Yes.
it's like funny, but it's also like extremely unnerving and horrifying at the same time. You have all this there's this movie that it also reminded me of. It's called Beau's Afraid.
Oh,
Beau's Afraid is about this guy with anxiety, like all this mental illness, and he's being tracked by his mother in this artificial reality of pure and utter insanity. And like this article really reminded me of those Adult Swim shorts and that movie, because it's just showing you these ideas, giving you little to no explanation, and just saying you have to accept this. This is part of the story. Have fun with it. I'm going to write this for you to read.
Yeah, absolutely. It's What If, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a procedural cop show.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
and it's also got some of his absolutely just sparkling / on fire Fifthist style lunacy dialogue later on as well. That's just mind blowing.
Yeah, Breen is just chock full of weird shit that he says. But that's not even the weird shit you're talking about. That's the last addendum, I assume, or almost the last addendum. God,
towards the end.
But I am like remarkably biased because there are so many references to SCP stuff in this. It's incredible.
See where this is going.
Yeah, but he also used my Sarkic agent, Lucretia Popescu from our Resurrection series, and it just did it in this very like, oh, well, she would know. She knows about Sarkic stuff. Let's have her come and interview this weird guy who's dealing with like body horror. And the thing about Popescu is that she's like 2 degrees off of a very cartoony Eastern European, like Romanian / Russian accent. Like people just go, well, how do you write her? And it's like, well, it's like Boris and Natasha, but like a little more grounded. Just a bit. I mean, I don't lean into it that hard because I want it to not seem like a cartoon. I don't want to be mocking people from that place. But I always write her to have, kind of some of the best lines. Always this very dry humor and kind of like astounded by how ridiculous people are around her in this world of supernatural shit. And she's a person that can like completely change her body and, in weird Sarkic ways. And he wrote her like perfectly.
Yeah, there's a line in here that seems like this. There's one particular that struck me as something you would have written for her to say, because the person they're interviewing keeps talking about being Zix and this thing about Zix and another thing about Zix, and she has the line where she goes, "Tell me who is Zix and what is a Zix? I don't know that. I was not paying attention in that class." Who is Zix and what is a Zix?
The next line of dialogue is a hand. Zix is a hand and a palindrome, a loop. I am a hand's hand. And Popescu says, "Who is your hand?" Like she's following along, but she's also like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I love that it also ends with her just beating the shit out of this guy. They're like, "Oh no!"
He's
He's
all
like,
Lucretia stories.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like we could sit here and tell you each of the events in this story, but that doesn't do it justice. Let's just say that it is a crazy, like, adventure-filled, like, day in the life of the least professional agent ever who's sent to recover an anomaly, and other people are trying to steal the anomaly. But that really doesn't sell it. I just, God, please, people, if you listen to this show, please just go click on Fan Impulse's page and read some of the more recent articles, because he kind of took a break there for a while, and he's been coming back in like Series 6 and Series 7. He wrote a couple of things, and they are barely looked at, and it's like people don't understand how fucking great his stuff is. Drives me crazy.
Really good stuff.
Absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
also some really phenomenal audio work done in this one. Kind of tough.
Oh yeah, the audio log was a lot of fun too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I always love famous stuff. I've complained about how much I love the entry in
Can Rencon.
Can Rencon. The my God, my brain is just not there today. Blah blah blah, or the egregore. What's the main name of the fucking thing? Worry. Thank you. I could remember the subtitle, although I couldn't pronounce it somehow. I'm doing real well with my brain. That is one of the most fun things I've ever read. It's like, I think I told him it was like David Lynch and Lewis Carroll at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. He's got an incredible voice in his stuff. So yeah, read Famine.
Yeah, and he doesn't do that much stuff. And I've talked to him a bunch of times about, like, do more stuff. It's mostly like he just kind of like thinks about writing, every 6 months maybe. And then he sits down and he knocks something out, and then he just puts it on the thing and he walks away. And he doesn't plug his stuff. So that's what we're doing.
That's right.
Anyway. All right. Unless Plague, you had one last thing to say.
I think I explained most of the
Okay.
stuff. It's a great piece. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it genuinely... All the stuff that I've read from Famine before this is I could not arguably call them fun. Like, they're weird, they're unsettling, they're disturbing, they're fascinating, and I respect the fuck out of them, and I love them so much. And I want, like, when I write Victim, I try to capture, for a few times, not all the time, I've tried to capture, like, the tiniest snippet of Famine energy. But this one is just actually fun. It's just still told in that really weird, off-putting style. All right, but
Does the black moon howl?
Only for those with an unwavering desire to hear the truth.
Access granted.
You have been selected for an opportunity, an orientation as a trusted associate, if you will, into the secured, contained, and protected files of the Foundation. SCP Unredacted distributes new files for review Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on secure channels on YouTube, Spotify, and scp-unredacted.captivate.fm.
hey there, fans of Simply Creative People. We're still mostly unsponsored, so any financial help you can give us through Harry's or my Ko-Fi helps keep the show running. If you can't support us financially, just try to spread the word about the show. We've grown in the last year of production, but I think there's still a wide audience of SCP fans out there who would get a lot from our podcast. Finally, in every episode we leave a link in the description to my author page and to Harry's, along with our guests. Consider clicking through and checking out our work. We've both been so pleased to see the growth of the show and hope you'll consider reading some of our stories on the Wiki. Thanks so much for all the support during this first startup year of the show. Here's to 5 more years of episodes. Harry, you picked SCP-8997, Infinite Impossibilities by They Call Me Tim.
Did amazing in the last contest, and then showed up in this contest to also do amazing. You may recall this was the author of Three White Horses, the apocalyptic no water desert hallucinogenic horror / hope piece from the last contest, which was fantastic. So yeah, what is this called again? What's this piece that I picked called again? What's that?
Infinite Impossibilities.
Infinite Impossibilities.
8997.
Yep, and this one should be enough to make all of the purists happy, because it's almost entirely writing. Other than a whole bunch of ACSs and a picture towards the end, it's relying on its words, so that the 2018 crowd can be happy about that. And it's able to rely on its words because it's a format screw that makes a lot of very good use of the trope of one person is using the article as their personal poster board as they go insane. Because the nature of the anomaly has created, as with Tim's entry in the previous contest, an apocalyptic scenario where everything is going horribly, terribly wrong. And this researcher is, by turns, explaining what went wrong, explaining the anomaly that caused it to go wrong, explaining where that came from, and generally experiencing existential breakdown and horror as they are the only person who really can tell what's going on, and they're completely alone except for the file, and they're speaking to the file, they're speaking to their former colleagues, they're speaking to the anomaly itself, which I don't want to spoil, and it's one person very entertainingly, like something really arresting about the prose means you're able to watch somebody ramble as they go crazy.
Right.
It's not a long piece, but it's not a short piece either. You're able to watch this person lose their shit and be interested in it. And part of it is because of the way it just really gradually unfurls what actually happened. So it keeps you wondering what the details are. And part of it is just there's a really brilliant use of voice, which was also the case with Three White Horses, where Three White Horses, you could actually tell that those people had been out in the desert just like losing their shit because everybody was more than a little bit off in a way that's really hard to fake and yet was being faked by the author. And the ability to just write somebody losing their shit at length it's an interesting test to see who can write their equivalent to reality. And this one absolutely nails it in my opinion.
Yeah, I like the thing I like. Oh, go ahead.
No, mine's a little long ago.
Oh, something that I really liked was the consistent shifting back and forth from somebody losing their shit to someone trying directly to explain to a future reader what's happened. And it happens multiple times where we go from getting a description, the first description, because there's multiple attempts to try and tell what this SCP is. So there's multiple sections that have description, con procs, etc. And the first one is just gobbledygook, basically. It's not, I mean, it's all understandable, but you're like, that's not a description. And then immediately afterwards goes into kind of the history leading up to whatever it is that this thing has done to try and explain the context in a very cogent way. And then and that small paragraph ends with him just saying all one sentence, all one word, blah, 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 blah. It's just, there's a consistent sense of, I want to, as the researcher, I want to explain what it is that's happening, but also I'm so fucking frustrated by the situation, and I'm losing my shit because I can't even talk to anyone because everyone is either dead or also losing their shit, that I'm constantly breaking into insanely non-clinical language. And I like how it goes back and forth. If you stick with it, you're entertained by the weird ramblings and the bizarre, statements, which also tell you things, just not in a straightforward way. And then it kind of pays off because you get little bits and snippets about more until basically 3/4 of the way down, you find out what the SCP actually is. And, oh, I see what's happening here. Plague, what were you going to say?
Something I always I like to commend SCP authors for is writing something with one character and keeping a reader involved that entire time. It's, for me personally, it's such a hard thing to write. I like my dialogue has a character to bounce off of. It makes it easier for me as a writer to get where I need to go, because you have to balance pacing, character voice, and exposition all through just one character, which is a very, very difficult task to do. And the fact that this does it in such a unique way where it's a format screw, you don't know the anomaly straight off. These are all turnoffs for a reader who's just looking for an SCP. But this does it in such a way that it's so successful. It's a really, really good piece of person going nuts cliche. It's a great entry into that little subsection of SCP lore. I would say for me, I like it a little bit more than 3001 just because it's a little more unique. It spins that concept of somebody alone going crazy in its own unique way, and I can say unique over and over again. It's a really unique piece. I recommend it.
I like it more than 3001 as well. But I think that this is very informed by 3001, so that's kind of a weird comparison to make. But just wanted to read the first description, which tells you nothing really, but it's SCP-8997 is everything you ever wanted. It's everything you worked for. It's everything you deserve. It's winning the lottery. It's being the first person to never die. It's your piece of artwork that renders you immortal. It's sharing a secret about yourself and no one laughs. It's your expertly cultivated, revered, and unbreakable reputation. It's the one thing you've ever needed to die happy. It's being told you're worthy of love. It's you believing them. It's being the person you always knew you could be. It's painless, effortless, joyous existence. It's life without mistakes. It's you without imperfections. It's every promise kept. It forgives you. That is a fucking hell of a way to open up an SCP, because I was straight up like, no idea what you're talking about. And then immediately goes into pretty much right away telling about how throughout the course of 2034, the O5 Council got remarkably focused on trying to understand, why do we keep getting new anomalies? What is it that creates anomalies? And how the focus of that became the focus of all the SCPs, where the entire Foundation was now trying to focus on what is it that's creating anomalies. We have to figure that out, and we have to stem that tide. So let's stop worrying about containing quite as much, and let's start funding projects that can address the way that we keep getting new anomalies. Eventually, we're going to run out of the ability to contain all these, which is a really reasonable basis to start with. But, wait a little bit to even tell you about that. And even that is only context for what you eventually find out what 8997 is. That's not 8997. That's just the history of why it was thought up in the first place. And I won't say what it is. Yeah, it's really good. This is also...
It is hard.
Go ahead.
It's hard to wax poetically about this one without getting into a little
Yeah.
So I recommend... It's a shorter piece.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say... It's maybe around 4,000, 5,000 words.
Yeah.
Check it out.
It's like a 10-minute read at most. It's also remarkably underrated. It's not even 70. It's a 68. And it deserves a lot more attention. The thing that you were talking about, Plague, that I think I really wanted to bring up, it's really hard to tell. This isn't first person exactly, though there are parts that are in first person. But there's the idea of someone just talking to you through the piece. Specifically, this is somebody talking to the file. This is them just spewing all their thoughts down onto the file. That can get didactic very quickly. It can do, the essentially wrong thing of tell, don't show. And more importantly, most people are not that interesting, even fictional people. And the reason we like them is because of the way they react to other people or to events. And this is mostly not that. This is this person reacting long afterwards, that we have to slowly trudge through his madness to understand what it is that happened. And I'm reading through the Dune books right now, and the first 3 books are they're incredible, but they are pretty straightforward on the surface anyway, where there are different characters and there's dialogue and there's this and there's that. And the 4th one opens up with someone discovering years later the journals of this famously immortal tyrant. And throughout the book, almost every single chapter is opened up with a page or half a page of a section of this person's journal. And I swear to God, I could just read a whole book of 2's journals. Like, it's just so well written, and it's incredibly introspective and interesting, and it's hard to do. And this gave me the same kind of vibes, where I felt like here's this person who is being fully fleshed out as a character, but the only way we see it is through this, quote unquote first-hand account, which isn't that because he's losing his shit, but the pacing of how he loses his shit and what he says when he's making sense and what he says when he's not making sense, all very much informs you to this person's character and to the experiences he's gone through, even though it doesn't really give you a rundown of what happened once everything went to shit. You have to kind of fill in those blanks yourself. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah. Really good.
Also, it's fairly absurd and funny until it isn't, and then it's just really fucking dark. There's a nice left turn there towards the end that's just like, oh. Fuck. Which, is something that I feel like do very well in SCP, which is the shifting left-hand atonal break to make you suddenly go, oh fuck.
Yep.
It's that fridge horror thing, I guess. But, okay, yeah, we can't really talk much more about it without giving stuff away, so let's move on. Plague, you picked Body of Evidence by our friend Disidron. That's 8992. Why?
Mhm.
This one's gonna be, I have like 3 sentences written because I don't want to give that much away. But why did you pick this one?
I think it's just fun. I think it's one of those ideas where it's basic, it's an easy idea to understand, but the way it's presented is so unique, it's so fun. And the little trick Disidron did where he made it so... I'll explain the anomaly first. So the anomaly is a researcher who is either viewed as a dead person or as an alive person for whatever reason. I could see this researcher as an alive person, and Harry could see this person as a dead person, and we're both going to be very, very staunch in our beliefs. So what Disidron did was, and this was my recommendation, by the way, I'm taking credit for this, he made it so the offset that you get when you click the accept and continue link after the little warning you get when you open the page, it randomly selects if your article was written by somebody who views the researcher as a corpse or views the researcher as an alive person. And it's just this fun little romp. It's not really fun. It's horrifying, but it's also really fun.
It's
this fun romp.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so good. It's really good.
It's very funny, but it's also really fucked up. It's depending on which one you read, it is one of the two. And actually, the one from the perspective that thinks he's alive is both, because it's like, this is ridiculous. What a ridiculous situation to be in. But then it's, oh god, like my bit of crit was, hey, in that scene, just really lean into it. Really lean into the fact that this person thinks he's dead. And what do you do to dead bodies? You dissect them. You autopsy them. So let's have a scene like that. There's not a lot to spoil. Yeah.
Because this article is very straightforward. It gives you an idea. It just follows the logical conclusion of that idea, and then you read the opposite perspective of that idea.
Yeah, they perfectly mirror each other. So each section is filled with some of the same material. The only difference will be in the one that thinks he's dead, there's obviously no dialogue from that person, and we don't understand at all what he's going through, because he's a corpse. And the one where they think he's alive, we do hear what he has to say about these things. And so, depending on which one you read first, the other one is like informed by your understanding of it. And it's, like you said, it's very quick, especially because you can kind of skim it the second time and just look for the differences. But it's equal parts hilarious and horrifying.
For me, the thing that really elevates it, you mentioned it sideways, but we'll mention it like front on. It's a list pages article with 2 fragments, where the one is the alive and the one is the dead. And like Blake said, you get one or the other depending on what the random number got. The thing that I thought was just so great when I read the draft originally was then you get a thing at the end saying, oh, the edit log page has been broken. Do you want to see the current version? And you load it, and then it's the other version you didn't get. And then at the end it goes, the edit lock on the page has been broken. Because the 2 halves of the site are in a civil war about whether or not this guy's dead. And they are reverting the article back and forth on each other like they're a newbie with a cold post trying to take the rating module off their page. They're reverting back and forth between each other. So the article goes on forever. And that is one of the best uses of list pages I've seen. That totally justifies it.
Yeah, this is exactly really what I look for out of the contest. Like, we will get all of these grand ideas, these long articles, and some of them will be successful, some of them won't. We'll get a lot of introspective pieces, we'll get a lot of meaningful pieces. But sometimes you just get something that's so fun and so unique, and it's inspired by the theme in such a different way. Some people have this idea. You could call it's a twist on the word fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have this idea it's a corpse. Some people have this idea it's a living, breathing person. Do we know who it is? No. Do we know who is right? No. But it's like just one of those unique ideas that a theme can create. Dissidron wrote this. It was posted on the last day. I don't know this for 100%, but it didn't look like Dissidron was going to participate. They've been taking a break from the site, and they just come in. They throw this pitch straight down the middle, right? And it's perfect. I don't have a single complaint about it. And I also like it's so succinct and so perfectly written that I don't have a lot to say about it either. It's a great idea presented in a great way, and you'll come away from it being weirded out, you'll laugh. It's exactly what I look for out of an SCP.
It's exactly what I look for out of Distrodron's articles. Every single time every time I've read one of Distrodron's stuff, it is at its core this very, very simple idea that is just interpreted in this very interesting way, a way that I never would have seen coming. Like I've said 1,000 times, he's the reason that Victim exists, because if Distrodron hadn't given me idea for something that makes you so scared that it makes you forget what the thing is that scared you, I never would have written the first Victim thing. And all of Distrodron's articles are at its core, something you could easily describe in one sentence. But it's how just brilliantly he interprets them. It's just, I don't know. It's
always amazing.
Yeah, Distrodron's just...
And just like brilliant writer, and also just really nice person.
Yeah!
It's always nice when he comes back to us, because he goes on little voyages away from us from time to time. And it's always just a pleasure when he comes back, and especially when he comes back bearing gifts.
Yeah, and he's been
a
on this
big
show
reason
twice.
why. Yeah, he's a big reason why a lot of my articles have been as successful as they are. Of course, I thank all of my critiquers. You two are always important. But this is always somebody who will take an article and break it down word by word for me in a way that, like, it's so selfless of him, because he wants to see all of his friends succeed. And I'm always thankful for him. Like right now I'm working on this horror article, and I've never really written an actual straight up scary article, and he's very familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
So he's like going over the process with me. He's taking my ideas, breaking them down, telling me what works, how to make this scary, maybe present it this way, and it's been very helpful. And he gets a lot of his articles do get the credit they deserve, but some of them don't, and this is one of those.
I genuinely think his stuff
there
should be more popular. His most successful ones are like, it's shocking to me that he's not like a top 10 author. I genuinely like his stuff is just so fucking good. But yeah, it's short but right to the point, and it's fucking brilliant. Like every time we talk about this stuff,
and we will again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hopefully. All right, and hopefully he'll come back on the show again, even though the timing makes it so that we have to do it very different times. Because he's a British person. All right.
Excellent British accent. A+, no nose.
Oh, I wasn't. I didn't even try to do an accent.
You did. Your brain.
That's hilarious. That's amazing. Good.
Didn't even notice it.
But speaking of, and that one's only at 76. And fuck off. That's great. It needs to be better. This one that we're going to talk about next got a little bit more attention, but still wasn't even in the top 20. And that's SCP-8666, Roig's Red Death, by Storm Breath.
Easily one of the best articles in the entire contest.
Yeah, I unabashedly, I told him this in my comments, and I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it again. It's my favorite 8K entry by a country fucking mile. Like, just...
It's phenomenal.
I love
one
it.
Of the best
Every
SCPs
fucking bit of it. Yeah, it's easily one of my favorite SCPs, maybe period, ever. It's just so fucking good. This is... Okay, so we've all heard stories either through urban legend or through a movie that's about it or a story that's about it. I've listened to podcasts that are about this concept. It's a movie that was produced, and the result was so cursed that it's sort of a lost film, or watching it brings about some horrible curse on you. The production was so terrible that people died or whatever. And that's what this SCP is. It's a movie that when you watch it, essentially the antagonist from the movie will show up somewhere around you, and you'll be doomed. That is not actually what the article is about, because the article is a deep dive, like documentary style, about the production of this film, which is an adaptation of Poe's The Red Mask of Death. Why am I blanking on the name of it now?
I'm just enjoying. I'm just soaking it all in. Your excellent extended title.
Oh, The Mask of the Red Death is the Poe story, which is the only Poe story I like, except for Pit and the Pendulum. And basically the idea of that story is it's this, incredibly fancy party where all these rich people, monarchs and nobility are hanging out. And there's somebody it's a costume party, and somebody is walking around in this creepy red death costume, essentially like a Grim Reaper, but all in red. And all these motherfuckers keep dying because this is actually death at this party, essentially visiting justice on the rich and the powerful. So this guy, Roig, is a director who decides he's going to adapt this story in film with some extra stuff, and there's extra scenes that wouldn't have been in the story to kind of lend a little bit more, create more of a narrative to it. But this article feels like a documentary that you're reading about the production. It goes through the casting process. It goes through them looking for where they're going to film it, and the actual production and the writing of it, and how everything goes so incredibly wrong, and also possibly was infested by evil spirits or whatever. It's very unclear. That's the best part, is that you don't ever really get an understanding of what this thing is that's trying to ruin the production and then ruin anybody that watches it. But it's my favorite part about it is that outside of the sections that are just telling you the history, which kind of reads like a very, very well written Wikipedia sort of deep dive, there are all these first-hand accounts. Imagine in a documentary you go away from the footage and the narrator to then hear somebody who was there or is an expert in there give a little sprinkle of context. Here's what happened when we were filming this scene. And it's cast and crew that were at the movie, and then it goes back to the bird's eye view of what happened in the production, and it's just it's the most obvious comparison is this trend that's come out in internet journalism over the last 10 years, which is an oral history of blank. Yeah. Or
you read those articles and they go like they intersperse narratives with interviews with all the people who were involved. Here's what the cinematographer thought, and here's what the director was saying, and here's what the actors were saying, and then they use that to fill in the blanks for you. And it's very effective because each one of them has a completely unique voice,
right? Culminating
in one of the best pieces of voice in the SCP Wiki, which is the last of the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
What works best about this one for me is like Stormbreath. If you know him, I know him personally. A lot of us talk to him on a pretty regular basis. He loves true crime or like old media. A lot of like, I'm lost for words, but like these documentary style, these Parawatch style. If you're familiar with Tales on the SCP Wiki, old creepypastas, all this stuff sort of shapes a lot of his writing. And for this one, for me, was reading something I really don't care about anyway. Like, I don't, like, I have no interest in old film or old internet creepypasta. It's never been my thing. But the passion on this page makes this article so much more enjoyable. It's very similar to his other piece he did on the mimetic serial killer. Mm-hmm. I'm not that interested in true crime. But I could see that passion he has where he takes these elements that he really enjoys of different medias, different books, and he puts it into the SCP file, and he makes it such a joy to read. And this is a very similar experience where I could see the passion he has to maintain a time period, to maintain character voice, to make the verisimilitude of the article stick out. And this is in my top 5 of what I've read this contest. It might be in the top 3. I got to it later, and I'm really upset I did. It's
Same.
really, really good.
It's my number 1 with a bullet. I fucking love this article. Famously, Apocalypse Now is a movie, pretty famous film, that was a fucking disaster of a shoot. Like, you know, people got hurt. It took way longer than it needed to. They were stuck out in the woods. Marlon Brando was acting like a fucking maniac. People were like high as fuck. Like, actors would only be there for a little bit, but then the actors that were there all the time were catching malaria. Like, it's an insane, like, if you ever go and read about the production of Apocalypse Now, that's more interesting than the film. I would argue that movie is not actually very good, but the story of what happened on the set is incredible, and awful, and this feels like that. Or alternatively, it feels like a trend. So we've been seeing found footage for a long time, and more recently, I've been seeing this trope in horror where it's found footage, but it's framed in a way that it's supposed to be a documentary. Like, we are looking at the found footage of the victims of whatever blank happened, and then we are going and we're transitioning to talking to experts in the legal field or psychological field or supernatural or whatever, and then it goes back to the found footage, and it's just like a straight up documentary. There's a series of movies called Hell House LLC, which is really not that original of a concept, but the execution, because they portray them as these documentaries trying to get to the bottom of these weird things that happened, as if these are documentaries that have been released in universe. It's just fantastic. And this perfectly sort of merges those concepts, the idea of the horrible film production and these horror movies that are told as if they are a documentary. And it just, it works on so many levels. There's not a single moment of this SCP that's wasted. Every section is fucking interesting as fuck and dark as shit. But, you know, there's so much character voice here. Most of the characters barely get any screen time, quote unquote. A lot of them get only one of these little blurbs, and then maybe a section or two in the more narrated part of it, the more historical aspect of it. But all these different characters feel really well realized. You know, first, whether it's the director, who we never hear from, or the main actor, or some of the other side character, the actors that play it, or the cinematographer, or whatever. They feel like real people, and that was the thing I came away from the most. Was I could be convinced that this was real,
Right.
even though it's supernatural, and that's hard. That's real hard to do. Oh, I love it so much. But yeah,
I like I mentioned with the mimetic serial killer one. I hope Stormbreath writes more of these. I love their what's the canon? The kaiju canon.
War on All Fronts. Yeah,
I love their War on All Fronts pieces, but these are like a very old, creepypasta style idea that's a breath of fresh air at the same time. Because like I said, they're written with such passion and in such a unique way. I really do hope Storm writes more of these.
What I think is really interesting is that they're not written like creepypastas. They're clearly informed by things like, you know, what's his name? Any of these different YouTubers that talk about like weird, true, spooky things, you know, Nexpo or whatever. You can imagine Nexpo doing a video on this film production. But it's just entirely made up. So it's very inspired by things like creepypasta or internet horror that we would have seen maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. But it's you know, it's got incredible verisimilitude is the thing that really blows me away about it. And yeah, I mean, I love War on All Fronts is my favorite canon to read from it. I've said that plenty of times, and this is easily my favorite. You know, Stormbutt's just, a real shining star of a writer. Got some real good stuff going on there.
Absolutely is. I think I wrote one of my most effusive comments for this one just because I read it, and especially the way it ends, because he's such a... I'm assuming it was completely intentional that he ended with his best interview, because the last one, the person absolutely leaps off the page with this like weird Werner Herzog-y kind of personality that they have. That's just an absolute delight to read, because these people aren't just telling you the weird story that happened. They're also telling you that a lot of them were pretty weird too.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to write a story where all the characters sound the same, and I have a tendency to do that, actually. I think a lot of my characters just sound like my characters. Reading this, everyone is so realized as a person, and the last one is an absolute masterclass in making a character stand out as a character, and it's a really good article.
Yeah. I didn't write an effusive comment because all I could say was this is my favorite thing. But it's a triumph. I think it's a triumph, and I think it did relatively well for the ones we're talking about. It's at 126 right now, but that's bullshit.
It's not remotely as high. That should have easily been in the top 100.
Yes, it should. I was mad when I read it, and mine was like more than 100 above it. And I was like, that's not right. Like, most of the ones I read, I'm like, oh, I wish this one did better. This one, I'm like, this one should be beating no offense to anybody else's thing. This should be beating almost everybody, if not everybody.
Yeah, it's upsetting.
Anyway, I love it.
Same.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Making good time. All right, so this is the sixth one. So this is Harry's pick. This is SCP-8880, Isaac Cedar, Sun Warrior Foe by Sonderins.
How did you number the last one, by the way? I was not quite paying attention. What was the number on the last one?
8666.
Okay, good. I was just making sure it wasn't what was in the email.
No. I put Clef's on accident. I have no idea.
Yeah, you linked Clef's accidentally.
I have no idea why. And, no hate on Clef's thing. It just wasn't the one I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so Sonderins. I mentioned this. This one's really low rated too. I mentioned this from time to time.
It's really low rated.
Sonderins is the first, I think, actually the first person on the SCP Wiki to which I owed something, because Sonderins greenlit my first SCP. And I don't see him around as often. I used to be on the IRC a lot. I've talked to Sonderins on there, but I haven't seen him very often. But he comes up in the contests, and it was good to see him here. And he wrote this one, which I thought was just absolutely full of charm in a dark kind of way.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised by how unusual it was. It's a piece about... it starts off with a kid dying. That's where it starts. Yeah. A kid disappears and dies, which is, I think, vaguely speaking, a reference to that famous case of the kid who was a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and then his death was blamed on Dungeons and Dragons when he ran into the steam tunnels under his university and disappeared and changed towns and stuff because of D&D. But this takes a really different approach to it. Is this kid? His death appears to be linked to a series of appearances of very unusual individuals who start showing up in various places, and they've all got this D&D-esque nature to them. And the question is, why is this happening? And the answer is very moving and unhappy. It's a really unhappy piece, but it's got an unbelievable amount of charm to it because of the nature of it. And again, I feel like an asshole if I try to say exactly what's going on here. But what I really like about it is just the mix of whimsy and just depressing context to the whimsy. It's so unusual. The exploration of characters who aren't even necessarily real people characters expressing complex emotions about something that went horribly wrong in a way they did not expect. It's just such an unusual little piece with a lot of care in the characterization that just really appealed to me. And it's at 33, which just irritates me.
Yeah. It's basically, because right from the beginning, that the kid died, that there was a magic book, that the book is a choose your own adventure sort of thing that was meant to promote a Griggs food and alcohol depot. So all the weird people that come out of the book are like vaguely food oriented.
Right.
And the kid's body just appears, dressed in brightly colored cardboard armor. A plastic sword was placed in his lap. An autopsy shows a really horrible skull fracture, which nearly split his head in half. He's 11 years old. And basically what this is like the aftermath of an isekai gone wrong. This kid was transported to a magical world. Think any number of animes that are all about somebody being transferred to a magical world and they become the hero or whatever, or never-ending story. And what if a little kid was actually put into these sorts of life or death situations? And yeah, guess what? They're gonna get hurt or dead. And this is all like telling a story about weird fantasy characters coming to the real world to like give condolences or to mourn this child. It's really, really touching and really well written. And the concept is fucking brilliant. It's just a reversal on this very overdone trope in fantasy, but told in this very grounded way, which is really great as well. Like, what happens when somebody gets magically taken away to another place and ends up dying? The kids that get dragged into Narnia. What if they died? Would Aslan show up to their funeral? That's basically what this is. Only it's told with such a, I don't know. Given that my story was also kind of about a similar subject, I just felt like it just feels very sincere. And very in touch with the kind of emotion you experience when mourning someone or when you've lost someone. It does not feel. It's not a put up job by any means.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's very charming. It's very well written. And yeah, it's about a fairly dark subject. But it's a really smart reversal on a trope, and I'm always a big fan of that. Sonderance doesn't write enough. There's not enough Sonderance on the site, but I am always pretty impressed with Sonderance's stuff.
Absolutely.
Always underrated.
Yeah.
Always. Consistently underrated.
I think he's only done like 4 articles, maybe 5. And I used to give him shit all the time because he had, for a while there, just the 2 articles, and they were both about poop or asses in some way or an extent. This one is not. But yeah, it's only at 33, and it's not a long article either, and it's mostly dialogue. Just it's really, really good, and it's kind of a real shame that it has been so untouched. And I understand people see names they don't recognize and they don't necessarily put a priority on it. Everybody's got to be economical with the time they spend reading SCPs, but that's kind of the whole point of this show, is to maybe point people towards stuff they didn't know existed. And hopefully, all these articles, the link will be in the description. Please click through and read them all. They'll be worth it.
That's right. There is always a first time that you read something that will later be written by somebody that you consider a name that you're looking after. You always see somebody for the first time. So, always consider that maybe there's just something out there you haven't read that you'll love everything of. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could I claim something real quick?
You would
complain something? Off topic. No, claim.
Oh,
what are you gonna claim?
Am I the first birthday on the podcast?
Is today your birthday?
Your birthday today?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I didn't know that.
Well, for me, it just changed to midnight.
I didn't know it was your birthday coming up.
Okay.
Oh, I did too, actually, because our birthdays are really close together. You mentioned that when I mentioned. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
happy
and
birthday,
also
Blake.
Happy birthday, Plague, but also happy birthday, Harry, because your birthday was just 2 days ago.
Yeah, it's over now. Happy birthday, Blake.
That was the reason I went a little quiet for this segment. I had my family calling me in between this.
Oh. Yeah, happy birthday. What are you doing for your birthday? You're being on the podcast.
I am,
That's weird.
Funnily enough, with our next article, I'm going to Atlantic City.
Great segue.
for your birthday, you're going to Atlantic City. What did you do
Yeah,
wrong?
I'm taking a night. It's the closest nice casinos I have to me.
Atlantic City
That's
is much nicer than Reno.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Reno sucks.
Yeah, it's my 21st, so
Oh!
I'll legally be able to drink again.
Oh, legal
Ah.
drinking. Yeah. Don't drink something stupid like sour apple martinis like I did my first legal drink.
I had these mango martinis the other night, as illegally. I had mango martinis.
whatever.
It was very good.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That's gross.
But back to
Get a
Atlantic
Manhattan.
City.
Have a Manhattan.
Oh yeah, I'll have a Manhattan.
All right, good.
So are we ready to segue into the next one?
Yes.
So
I love
the
the
next
next one.
article that I chose, very, very good. Very, very good. It is The Life and Death of Vincent Bohart, SCP-8004. And it is
Bye.
an insane piece. It's
By
by
Dodo
Dodo
Devil.
Devil.
Yes.
Yes, I apologize for that. Should remember that.
Bastard.
Dodo Devil. So, firstly, the stylization of this article is absolutely beautiful.
It's great.
It's funny seeing the pictures Dodo always chooses because these are places I've been to. And I tell him, there's this one picture of the restaurant. I was like, oh, I ate there last year. He's like, I didn't even know this place was open still. So I love looking through that. There's a picture of a bridge here that I've driven over. Yeah, this is an article. It presents itself as a gambling style anomaly. It's a legerdman where you can manipulate the order of playing cards in a 52 card deck. Very, very basic anomaly. But it's very quickly it starts as a character study of Dodo's Site 333 director, Vincent Bohart. And it's just this great piece that goes in all these different directions. It is very, very funny. One of the funniest things that's produced in recent memory.
Yeah,
The
I laughed out
dialogue is
loud
on
multiple
point.
times. I laughed out loud.
Yeah, the
genuinely.
dialogue here is on point. So the way Dodo presents the story is in these. There's no real addendums here. It's just the SCP is presented to you, and you're given these kind of floating logs that develop the idea, and then give you more and more, extend the concept more and more and more into utter craziness. Hog Slice shows up in here, which was a surprise. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
I love this article. This is one of those ones where you read and you go, I think I just need to read all of this now, like all of the related pieces, because I've read a few of the Site 333 ones and I like them a lot. And I read this one and I'm like, this is now canon in my head. I'm grabbing these characters and going, I already intended to, but you are definitely part of my sense of what is real and definitely happened. Because the Site 33 premise is that these are the fucking dregs of the Foundation in a lot of senses. This is
a good idea.
This is the Foundation's, and there would have had to be one. This is the Foundation's worst site. Their site director is a fucking con man, douchebag, idiot, and the rest of them are well, they're not all idiots, but there's a variety of ragged misfit banditry going on here. But Bohart himself is just one of the hardest kinds of characters to write because he's an unlikable douchebag who is fun to read about, and that's hard. That's something a lot of people can nail. But his absolute bastardry in this article in particular is just absolutely magnetic, and the ending is so incredibly satisfying.
He
the
also
whole article just thrilled me.
He's also just a giant piece of shit as a person who is consistently funny and somebody you relate to, even though there's nothing relatable about him because of the way that Dodo writes him. He's so funny. His exasperation at people's behavior is ironic as fuck because he's a giant piece of shit. But you're also just like, yeah, that's fair enough. That person does sound exhausting. Only he sounds exhausting, but we're mostly taking it from his perspective. So just to give a bird's eye view of what this is. This is, like you said, Plague, this is about somebody who can do an anomaly, which is this reordering playing cards. But basically, this is one of the, maybe not one of the oldest stories, but a very consistent trope going back hundreds of years is someone gets visited by death and challenges death or the devil or whoever to a contest of wits, to a contest of luck, to a contest of skill, and they win, more life, or they win, some boon or something. In this situation, Bohart won a specific amount of time, 23 years or something like that. And hit time has come up because we start this article with a death certificate, which is for Vincent Bohart, date of birth 3/31/1969, date of death 2/19/24, cause of death auto. No, I can say it. It's just so funny.
I know it, but it's funny. It's funny.
It's so funny.
It's funny.
Auto defenestration. So that is being thrown out of a window. Parentheses, non-suicidal. It's 10 words in, and it got a chuckle out of me. And this is the second time I've read it. And basically, death is showing back up and saying, "Yo, time's up." And Bohart goes, "Come on!" Essentially, give me another chance. And Death says, "All right, if you do this thing, be selfless at least 3 times in the next, I forget how many days. Be entirely selfless. Then I'll give you fill in the blank amount of time more." And so we get to watch as Bohart does the least amount of effort possible to be selfless for very selfish reasons for the next 3 days or whatever. And the way that he handles trying to solve this problem is just to go up to random people at the site and go, "Hey, you need something?" It's so stupid. Like, you didn't think to maybe go volunteer at a soup kitchen? No. I'm gonna walk up to one of the guys I work with and go, "Yo, you need anything?" Like,
and they're all fucking weirded out because he's never done anything remotely like this before, and they're like,
yeah, I guess you could come with me when I look for the chupacabra or whatever. It's just. And then we go on a series of adventures with him and this other person trying to solve their problem. And it's hilarious. And it's pretty poignant, honestly, because for a scumbag, he has a pretty interesting view on the world. But I don't want to say more than that. And like Harry intimated before, the ending is really something. It becomes this...
The ending is like, I practically cheered at the big revelation.
Yeah.
Yes!
It goes places that you didn't think this funny, interesting character piece could go, like cosmic, like mysticals type shit, and then it circles back and ends on kind of a very funny scene. It's everything Dodo's good at. It's weird, otherworldly shit, but also told in this very human, very funny way. I can't believe Bohart is so likable. I don't like characters like this. I hate, maybe this will get me hate from the listeners, but I don't like Breaking Bad. I don't like Mad Men. I don't like those characters. They're not interesting. I know people like that. That's not a character I want to read or watch a show about. I know lawyers and politicians and judges. They're all scum. Okay? So when you run into a character that is just literally a con man, like a card shark, who somehow ended up cheating his way into becoming a site director at the worst site ever, it's like, oh God, what is this? And then, I said this in the comment, this is a fairly long article, but as opposed to all the other ones I was bitching about earlier that need to trim the fat, I don't think a single part of this could have been cut. It doesn't feel like its length by any means. It feels breezy. It's like you just you can't stop reading it. It's so funny.
These types of art, like the site, what is it, 333. I've tried writing for them, and it's such a difficult thing to do because I wanted to present it in the same way Dodo presents their articles, in this floating information format where there's not a lot of like that connective tissue clinical text between logs. It's just characters talking, and then information is delivered through those sort of log security footage, and then like Ryzen notices, stuff like that. A lot of it's very fill in the blanks, sort of. You fill in the gaps where you might get confused, and those stories worked out like that. The one they did with Josie the half cat, where it's all presented that way. It's such a like. I know that things have been written in a very similar way. Like my SCP-8000 was written in this way, where there's no addendum; it sort of just goes into it. But the bouncing back and forth between these text messages, then these two characters on their little adventure, and then notices these pictures. It's all so stylized, and like it might be a turnoff for some people, but it just works so well because at the end of the day, this site sucks. They do not follow any rigid structure that you would expect from the Foundation, and the articles being presented in this way, very artfully and very perfectly done, still develops that idea that this is not what to expect from the SCP Foundation.
Yeah, it's a very surprising article entirely. The fact that the setting is consistently like this is interesting. It's funny. I think it's the same what you were talking about, having a hard time getting your brain into the space to work for this. It's the same reason I don't feel like I could write exactly the way Harry does with his characters, or the way that you do with your characters. I think comedy is such a very specifically personal thing, honestly, and not the stuff that we find funny or touching, but it's why I'm so dedicated to the idea of finally doing a for real 3 Moons article this year, because it's just pretty much it's just Dave. Like, these things are all very, like, I know I'm not the only one who does Victim by any means, and I'm really happy about that. But like, like we all kind of have our own voice when it comes to comedy, I think. And it's hard to like totally get into each other's shoes, I think. So I'm actually working on something right now that's going to try and mimic Harry stuff, kind of. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Oh, golly.
I am jealous of this piece for how it...
Me too.
It does present its ideas so confidently. There's no fat. Like you said, it couldn't be any shorter. It just works. There's pure and utter confidence in stylizing the article this way, presenting the ideas this way, and presenting the story this way.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to what you said about the way this looks. It's not the CSS and the coding stuff that goes on in this article is really, really subtle, because it just seems very plain language in a lot of ways. It's mostly just focusing on the words, but it really is aesthetically incredibly pleasing to look at. Just shooting down for all the images are kind of different. There's like an old postcard. There's a pile of playing cards. There's a lady holding a hawk. There's this bridge, like you said, which is a really good picture. But it all fits really well. And there's this sense of like, I don't know. I'm not even really sure what the right word is for this aesthetic, but it really, really fucking works.
It does. It's clean. I think that's what it is for me. It's just real clean, which is really funny considering the grungy douchiness of the topic.
Yeah.
I just pieced this together. If you remember, Dodo used to do that scrapbook style art.
Yes,
and I think that this article is very similar to that, where it's sort of just pasting things in order where you can get an idea of the art and you could fill it in. It's very similar to like that style of art.
Dodo did an incredible thing for 6500 for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
was
was
a very nice piece of art for Beacon.
Oh, no, this was specifically to put into the article.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but it is
a lot of
that
images
it is that
during that contest that were like for other people and like of their entries and stuff. Yeah, and also did one that we have right in the article. Yeah,
we just asked to like, hey, you want to do one of those? But like we put it in the article. Well, yes. I'm like, awesome. All right, great.
Occasionally, I remember there's also art by Jack Dragon X and 6500.
Oh, that's right.
He did the image that Dark Stuff liked so much that Dark Stuff went, can I just put that in my...
That's right, yeah. Okay, but let's keep it moving because we're actually doing pretty good here. Yeah, 2 hours 18, but we're almost done. All right, so the last one that I picked is the longest fucking title in the contest, I think. SCP-84.
No, you're beat by that wizard one.
Oh, that wizard one has like an endless title. Yeah, but this is the second longest.
Oh, I'm not. Wait, which one? Radicars?
It's like the Wizard
No,
2 and then
Wizard
it's
2. It's a mega collab by a bunch of people.
Okay. Okay. So it's second longest title. SCP-84, which is that one time the Foundation attempted to use simulacrum technology to contain a Keter class entity in another world by JTKC. And that's 8404. This was pretty surprising, I want to say.
It's so funny.
It's really, really surprising. It is, at its core, kind of a reverse isekai.
Yep.
Because it is taking a magical creature and injecting them into mundane life, which is already a pretty good reversal. This is, the Foundation decides to contain Echidna, which is the legendary Greek myth mother of monsters, a goddess, quite literally, and a crazy if this person existed, this entity existed, would be incredibly dangerous. And they notice they're able to keep her unconscious, but even when she's unconscious, she's just generally creating monsters around her. And they figure out that if they put them into the simulated world that Jack Dragon X made up for Simulacrum, which I'm probably saying that wrong. Am I saying that wrong? Simulacrum? Simulate?
Oh, you ask while I have Coke in my mouth. Simulacrum, but I don't
Simulacrum.
think Simulacrum is particularly
So
relevant.
it's essentially the Matrix. It's a fully realized VR thing where it makes you feel like you're in a different world. Only Echidna's not in any confusion as to what's happened. She knows who she is. It's just all of a sudden she's in the body of a teenager Japanese schoolgirl. And what this starts off being is a slice of life anime where a monster is being forced to go to high school. I've actually seen anime like this. So at first I was like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. No, you don't. You only see what JTKC wanted to start off saying, because it takes all the tropes that it's throwing at you. This is a reverse isekai. There's a monster being forced to go to high school in a very anime sort of setting. And I'm not just saying that because it's in Japan. Like, it has all these anime tropes to it. And then sort of just rips the rug out from beneath you. And this story just really goes places. There's these incredible character arcs for both Echidna and the two artificial intelligence constructs that are set into this virtual world, not fully knowing what they are, to keep a watch. They're part of the containment, and they are fully characters as well. And there's these incredible arcs to them. I mean, both of Echidna slowly accepting this new reality, but never fully losing the sight of what actually happened. And also the AIC slowly come into realization with what the real world is compared to what they are. I wrote in my comment, I just can't believe how surprising this is, because you read the premise and you go, okay, I know what this is, and you really don't. It takes it in a very interesting, original way, and it's not a short article, but I would kill to see what happens next, because it ends in this way that's very satisfying. But it also feels like, you could build on this. There's more to be told with these characters.
Definitely. JTKC is somebody that I've been looking out for a while, just because when was it? Maybe 2 years ago they wrote that parody piece of 6140, where instead of the Deva Empire, it's the British Empire. Oh yeah. And they sent that draft to me. I forget if it was over Discord or DMs on the Wiki. And I remember reading it, I was like, God damn, this is hilarious. It was so funny. And then they did, for RemixCon, they did a remix of My Gumball Machine at SCP, and I love that one too. I think that one's very underrated as well. I think it's at like plus 40 6 months later. It's really, really good piece. This is, like, I would say a very, very groundbreaking moment for them, where I think they've really found their voice over the last year, and they're able to confidently put out a, what is this, 10K word article.
I think more.
With such a unique concept.
Yeah.
What is it?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's such a unique concept. I keep saying unique concept, but it is. It's a unique concept, taking echidna from Greek lore and tossing them into an anime story. Like, the balls to write that and say, I'm submitting this to this contest. It's I don't know if I would have the guts to do that, and it requires a lot of confidence, and I think it paid off.
I was so immediately on board because of their reactions to it as soon as it happens.
Oh, yeah, it's real good.
As soon as they get dumped into this,
it's real good.
They're basically like, what is this?
I am the mother of monsters. Bow before me.
they're the flat whatness of their responses to this, where they're just like, what is happening? What is this bullshit? and then just watching them get ground down and just eventually being like, fine, I'm in a fucking anime. Fine.
Yeah, there's really good, really interesting character work throughout. This is an immortal monster put into the body of a Japanese schoolgirl in an anime, not, and no creepiness. There's no like fan service stuff. It's just a slice of life sort of anime setting. Only, it's fucking not, because it's set in a virtual reality world, and two of the characters are artificial constructs, but they don't know. And the slow realization of what's happening to them, not just because of what they are and where they are, but because of who Echidna is by her nature, it's fucking incredible. Yeah, they just did such a great job. JJKC, other things that he's done, it's been really good. But this is, like you said, Plague, I really think that this was like a coming out moment. I mean, I feel like, first of all, it went over 100, which is great. I think it deserves more, because this is one of those few articles that is very tropey on a first like initial reading of it, but absolutely takes those tropes and says, no, fuck you. You're not gonna. I'm not gonna meet those expectations. I'm gonna reverse them. But even from the basic idea, the tropes that he's using in this are already reversed. So it starts from an interesting place already. Like, let's take these well-established concepts and let's smash them together. We've seen that before, but in this way that's kind of like reversed. Just like I said, it's a reverse isekai. Let's take a magical monster and throw them into everyday life, but that everyday life is, tailored to fit anime logic. But yeah, I cannot say enough how much the last third of this article is fucking incredible. It really goes places, yeah. And especially with the artificial intelligence like constructs, the AICs, and how interesting their characters become. Like, at some point, the article stops paying quite as close attention to Echidna and starts paying a little bit more attention to the AICs, and they're great characters too. It's really something.
Yeah, it's a fun piece. I think what I really love about the SCP Wiki is just that we can have all these genres, and you could take these crazy ideas. Like, who thinks of this? Tossing a Greek monster into a Japanese or into anime. Like, who comes up with that idea? And then further, who comes up with that idea and then actually makes it work? Right. That's something you can only see on the SCP Wiki, and that's another reason why these contest themes can be taken so wildly and really produce some fun content.
You know what this reminds me of? Have either of you read John Dies at the End?
I haven't. I don't think so.
Okay, so there's an author who used to go by the name of Dave Wong, but his name is Jason Pargin, and he has been writing these stories that are like horror or sci-fi inspired, but they're not believable. They're outlandish but they have such an irreverent tone that it's just kind of ridiculous. Anyway, JTKC's writing reminds me of Jason Pargin, where there are characters that will do outlandish or bizarre things, and what is on display is the author being absolutely invested. So the concept itself, like you said, who thinks of this? Who does this? It's not just the fact that JTKZ was able to stick the landing. It's the fact that like he sat down and said, okay, if I'm going to go with this concept, I need to like lean in. I have to. If I'm using anime tropes, I should be using scenes like an anime, and then I should, invest in it so that by the end of it, you forget that this has started off with a Greek monster being injected into an anime, because I just buy into this world that they're depicting, even though I know in universe this is just a virtual thing. I don't know. It's just really, it shows me a really consistent like investment in the concept. I came up with this mildly outlandish idea, and then I bought in. Like I just kind of kept going with it. And then, it wouldn't work if it wasn't such good character writing, which, they did a really good job here.
It's another similar experience for me to Roig's Red Death, Stormbreath's article, where I've never really been interested in anime. It's never been my thing. But I can see the passion that JTKC has for making this appear as authentic as possible and really investing us in this world. And that passion comes off the page and really keeps me invested.
What the fuck does that mean? I don't like anime. That's like saying I don't like movies. Anime is not a genre.
Well, yeah.
It's a medium.
I know that, but it's just I've never really consumed any anime, so it's not something that I have a lot of.
Gregory, he hangs around Dune a lot. That's the easiest way to not want anything to do with anime.
Well, anime is, there's so much variety to it. I actually really dislike quite a bit of anime. Especially the really tropey stuff, but some of the best things I've ever watched have been anime or manga, comics that I've read. I don't know. I mean, what I like about this is it's so clearly informed by the boring sort of everyday tropes you see over and over again. But these are not the kind of anime people. It's so funny. People think that like what anime is like just either like Evangelion or Dragon Ball Z or Naruto, and it's like no, that's just like the stuff that got like crazy big. There's like lots of small, intimate, and brilliant, creepy, funny. Like there's so many good weird things. But anyway, all right.
Well, no, I know. I'm just saying I'm not familiar with the tropes.
Sure, no, I get it.
Past like a very basic like meme level of just like anime this, anime that. So like seeing this and reading it, like I've gotten a full understanding that JTKC knows what they're writing about and wants us to know that he knows, and here's how I'm going to present this. Yeah.
Like I said, it's very informed by the tropes, but never really like is invested by the idea that, or invested in the idea that I need to present this thing, which is inspired by anime, as an anime, but does not restrain. He did not constrain himself like we were talking about in the beginning, like I was talking about in the beginning. Does not constrain himself to be like, okay, this is a monster goddess who's injected into an anime. That could have been a very flat idea that would have sailed on, the interesting idea of the concept. It would have been relatively successful. It would have been, charming, I'm sure. But that's just like the opening premise. The fact that this goes in this really interesting way, and there's a whole arc to the point where, like, by the end, I was like, wow, what's going to happen next? Which I wouldn't have expected with what this article presents itself to be at the beginning.
Right.
Anyway. Okay. So, last one, before we just throw out some lightning round stuff. This is your last pick. This is Here's to You, Mrs. Robinson. Fucking great title. SCP-8228 by Callie Bold.
This one is just so nice. I mean,
That's very sweet.
I'm always predisposed to like Cal's pieces because he'll send them to me for crit. Let me open another can of Coke, even though I haven't finished my first one yet, just so I get the sound in there. Cal will bring me something for crit, and it will be however long it is, and I will have perhaps one or two spelling mistakes in the entire article. And this predisposes me to adore anything that Cal writes. He has the least mistakes of anybody who I ever have to read for. And part of that is, I think, I never get something from him that doesn't feel like he hasn't labored on it for a while. He always feels like he's really put a lot into the stuff that he writes, and it almost always works. I always love reading Cal's stuff. So this article is a story about a guy looking for life extension cupcakes for his grandmother. That's the premise, is there are life extension cupcakes out there, and this guy is trying to find them for his grandmother, who he thinks has lived a life that she's entitled to live a longer life, so she can continue to contribute to the world. And in the process of attempting to find these things, he traipses across a variety of the more bizarre settings in the anomalous world, and Cal uses this to have fun with various toys that other people have created and put his own spin on them. So we go from the Shark Punching Center to Rounder Houses under Vegas to my setting in On Guard 4-3 as well. And the character who we follow and the sidekick are both really brilliantly well realized and entertaining. The use of the settings is all really clever and it all ties into the story. The character bits are all great, but overall it's an incredibly good-natured exploration of just what the breadth of the site is, while still being a focused character piece on somebody trying to do something at its heart that's a very good, like, kind act. So it's automatically predisposed to be a positive experience as they go through this incredibly weird world that we've all built together. And I really, really, really like this article, and it's one of the several ones that I feel like got slept on.
Yeah, it sort of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Cal stuff really does. Honestly, he kind of like isn't as involved as he used to be, but he's still always got his finger on creative writing and doing other stuff. Luckily, we talk to him quite frequently in Discord. He always surprises me, honestly. His stuff, he has such a variety. I mean, he can write something like E for Eternity, which is one of the most upsetting ideas, which we talked about earlier, for the horror anthology in, what is it, October 2022, and he can write this, which is just a good, fun, adventure story about a guy trying to help his grandma, I think. And, just opens up with like a glass, cake stand with a bunch of really, really fancy looking cupcakes on it. And you're like, what is this about?
It's a really nice picture.
It's a really good picture, yeah, of a very like mundane thing, and it feels very like series 1 in that way until it doesn't, and you realize it's quite a long adventure that's traipsing across the entire SCP universe. But it's just, yeah, it's just really it's really fun. It's unbearably sweet in a way that is impressive because it is bearable, because it's really nice character work. Like if you were to tell me what this story was about, I would be like, oh, I don't want to. I mean, that's nice, but and it's just this ineffable guy who will not stop at anything to try and help his grandma out, which is just the kind of that just sounds like Cal himself, and yet the ridiculous situations that this character gets himself into because he goes to all those places you just mentioned and experience. I mean, like the part where I remember when I was creating this, I'm like, is this SBC? Like he went into the world of SBC? Like, no, I'm just, they're just here now. They're just here.
Yeah, they're just here now.
And I'm like, okay, like, sure, great. I mean, that's hilarious. All right. And it just works. It's not a short piece, but there's no part of it that's like boring. It's all very charming. And it's just like this really sweet guy who ends up in a bunch of ridiculous situations. And it's just a lot of fun. It's really underrated. It's like only 54.
Yeah.
It's shocking. I mean, I think it's just these are most of these that we've talked about are victims of the fact that there was 130 articles and a bunch of them were long and stuff, and there was a bunch of people that were not really trying that hard to read into the other. But it always bums me out because people know Callie Bold is capable of writing great stuff. I wouldn't say this is necessarily his best article, but like they're never a waste of your time.
Oh, never.
Yeah, it's always really fun.
He always has these I'm gonna say it again, these unique concepts. Like the decommissioned department he brought back from death and made it into this really cool thing.
Yeah.
That's like not really seen on the wiki. Like it's the idea of who's behind getting rid of anomalies, not something the Foundation normally does. And then you have, like you mentioned, Grigori, these very scary articles, one of the best horror articles written in the last year. And then you get something where it's just kind of just like this sweet odyssey.
I know.
This guy's trying to get some cupcakes and he just ends up like this nice misadventure. It's a lot of fun. I've read this as soon as it came out, just to get my mind off the stress of the contest. Because I saw the picture, I was like, that looks nice. So yeah, and it was nice.
It's so funny you brought up Beau is Afraid. This is like the tonal opposite of Beau is Afraid. Because it's like this odyssey in very much a similar way. We're using that word and it's ironic because Beau is Afraid is actually an adaptation of the Odyssey. But, it's this epic journey, but it's just like sweetness and light throughout it. And it's not like boring. It's, I don't want anyone to think, oh, it's this guy trying to save his grandma. Oh, that's sweet. No. It is that, but it's also fun and funny.
They go to hell.
Yeah.
A giant submarine drills a hole into an underground site. There's some good shit in there.
What's so funny is because of the groundedness of the character, all these things are like you just sort of accept them because he's just sort of like, oh, well, that just happened, and then you just one step closer to getting those cupcakes, I guess.
Right.
And the way that my favorite part about this is that Bill Robinson, who's the main character, is not supernatural or anomalous in any real way. It's just the fact that like he just sort of has this willingness to like just approach people. Like at one point, very early on, he's just like goes and talks to like people at Marshall, Carter and Dark and just goes, "Hey, I heard you guys were selling these things." And then it's just like, oh, this isn't gonna go anywhere. No, he has an interview with them and they talks, and it's just like, and then from there he kind of moves on and is able to talk to somebody else, and then he ends up, on a boat with the shark punching center, and it's just you just sort of buy it and go from scene to scene and just go, yeah, okay, that's happening now.
It's funny because I saw a comment that was like critical of this piece saying how things go too smoothly. And it's funny because I know people in real life who are able to just talk to people. Like my one buddy this past weekend, he met with this club owner. He has no DJing experience whatsoever. Him and his friend ended up DJing a night at their bar. So it's like things like that where people just, if you talk to somebody, some people just have that gift of gab where they're able to get like these random opportunities. And this is just that taken to an anomalous level.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's just a series of like unlikely events, only it never really, even though it's kind of a dark subject matter to begin with because it's about someone's loved one potentially dying, it's got so much like whimsy to it. That's the core idea I think here is that it just feels like the Adventures of Baron von Munchausen or something without the very dark moments of that movie.
Yeah, I mean it's the SCP Foundation. If you think about it, whimsy kind of makes sense for this stuff because it's all so weird, and this handles the weirdness very well. This guy just hanging out with all these things. The first thing that happens to him is he meets the shark punching center, so nothing's going to seem too much weirder than that afterwards.
I mean, he literally goes to an office of MCD and Marshall Carter and Dark, and through his connections, through his ability, talking to like the receptionist, basically, he ends up talking to like Dark, like of Marshall Carter and Dark. Like, it's just, what the fuck? How did that happen? Well, no, it just, he's pretty charming. And I don't mean the waifish way. I don't mean like Han Solo. He just is like, people talk to him, and even Arya Stark is like, I kind of want to help you out.
Yeah, he's just a chill guy.
Yeah.
Just almost everybody he encounters helps him out in some way, except for my author Avatar, who's a douchebag.
Pretty funny.
And gets the crap kicked out of him too, which I appreciated tremendously. Well, obviously, Director House is also a douchebag, but that's his whole character.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, without just like cataloging everything that happens in this article, I don't know what else there's to say to it. It's just really worth your time. It is, again, like Dodo's, long, quote unquote, relative to some of the other ones we talked about. But, it's great. Honestly, just, if the length is a problem, just like read a section at a time. It's broken down in a very digestible way. It's really, really fun and really worth your time.
Absolutely.
But okay, we're going to do like a lightning round. I threw out 4 of these, but you guys can just, add any of them that you want. Keep in mind, we don't want to talk about these that much. These might be ones we want to talk about next time. But, we don't have to shout out any of the ones in the top 20 because we're probably going to talk about those. Or any of the ones that are really successful. So, the one I want to talk about, which is VNP 8050, which is one to rule them all by 4 people. Damien Throne, Diogenes, UNC Griffin, and Warrior of Chaos. They originally approached
Thorn.
me. Oh, and Thorn. I don't remember that.
Not Throne, Thorn.
Yeah, I said Thorn. Is it just Thorn, or is it
Damien Thorn?
Damien Thorn.
It's one person.
Sorry. Yeah, okay, so
Get it right.
I said Damien Thorn.
I'm pretty sure you said Throne.
You did
Okay.
say Throne.
Whatever.
Ganging up on the host.
Whatever. My point is, I read the name.
It's not your
I
birthday.
thought you
bitch.
made no. Oh my god! I'm not defending whether or not I said throne. I'm saying I thought you made me think for a second. I didn't read that name.
Yep.
Anyway,
That was
all
fun.
right. They came to me, well, mostly Diogenes and UNC Griffin, and because they wanted to do something as a main list Vanguard article.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so cool, because we really only have had a couple of those. And wow, for 8K, you're going to go with, that's great. Like, that's kind of risky. A lot of people don't necessarily know what Vanguard is. And this one didn't get a lot of love. But, and I said this in the comment, this works really well as a follow-up to 6500. Like, it's addressing a lot of the issues that we kind of teed up in writing Vanguard about, what is Vanguard going to do now that, half the O5 Council has disappeared, and, the world knows who they are, and what sort of problems are they going to have. It starts with a really, really simple concept of like a magic ring, but that's not really what this article is about at all, even though it does play an important part. It's just really, it really blew me away, because, none of these are, no offense to anybody, none of them are very big authors, and I hadn't seen any stuff from Damien Thorn or Diogenes, except for drawing from Diogenes. And I was really,
drawings, yeah.
really, really impressed by this. It was really well written, I thought.
Absolutely. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it was really fun.
It's good. It's a little epic. It's
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings reference in the title is not entirely superfluous, because it is kind of a romp across the newly established Vanguard world to stop an evil overlord, as it were, with a ring. So
Yeah. It's really terrific. They did a really good
also
thing.
uses Ip's author Avatar.
Kate
Dr.
Sinclair.
Sinclair.
Yeah. Catherine Sinclair. Yeah, really well, honestly. So Catherine Sinclair got 2 entries this because Ip came back and did it. I fucking love that article. The roast not taken.
It's really, really good. That'll make my list for the next one.
Yeah, if you didn't, I would. I love it a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, then I won't. You can. I'll get an extra one.
No, you already claimed it. Too bad.
Oh. Okay.
Because we gotta talk about Tuftos.
Well, obviously.
I fucking love Book of Kings. Anyway, all right. Another one, which is by regular email writer here and a friend of mine, Gizma. It's SCP-8457. That time I, a Foundation agent, was abducted into another world at war with mine.
What a title.
What a title. This is a Foundation agent gets kidnapped with a bunch of people at a truck stop and a Sarkic teenager. And gets thrown into this other world where these sort of like doppelganger type people that try to take, kind of pod people trying taking over our universe by taking our forms, but they're kind of like insects underneath it all. And it's just like a fucking epic science fiction action movie. It's really, really well written. I've always liked Gizmo stuff. Gizmo, who's contributed a bunch to Vanguard. But this was like really stepping it up.
I really enjoyed that one. It is like a fun action aliens invade kind of movie, and I compared it to like 10 different things when I read it. It's a bit The War of the Worlds. It's a bit like V. It's a bit like Independence Day. It's got its tongue quite firmly in its cheek, and it's also just really entertaining. Yeah,
it's terrific stuff. And then SCP-8817, which is View the World by Estrella Yoshte.
Oh, that one that was just a masterpiece of look what I can do with the online format.
I agree, but I think it had like real chops.
It's got a real touching story in it.
Yeah, you could have stopped at this really brilliant CSS stuff. I mean, good God, there's like 2 jump scares in there. But they're not scary. They're not scary. But like, it's like, wait, what's happening? I mean, we all know how talented Estrella is at this stuff. But holy shit! Estrella was saying at the beginning of this contest, "I'm gonna fucking show everybody," and you did. You did.
Absolutely did.
Oh my god!
The absolute cleverest use of visuals in the contest.
It's amazing.
And people like to dog on that. I mean, the writing on this one's really good, and the character stuff is really good. But people like to go, "Oh, you're just relying on the visuals." Like, okay, it's weird that people who are like half my age are acting like they're twice my age. Internet fiction that's not using the fact that it's on the internet at all is not using some of the stuff it should be using.
Yeah, and also it's
on a fucking web page.
There's only a couple of tricks. Like and they're very impressive. And sure, it's if that's all there was, then I would give that argument a little more credence. But maybe it's a little gimmicky, but it's not. There's a fully
the
fleshed
visual
out
cleverness is used in defense of this really cool story. It's used to bolster it and to improve the emotional resonance of it, and it works.
If it didn't have any of the, and I don't want to give it away because it's so impressive. If 8817 didn't have any of these tricks, it would still be a really remarkable article.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes me mad that people said that about that article. I fucking love that article.
Did people say it about that one specifically? I didn't notice.
Oh, I thought you. I didn't realize you were talking about.
If anybody did, if anybody did say that about this one specifically, just understand we all want you to feel bad about yourself as a person.
Yeah, go f yourself.
Estrella is awesome, and Estrella does really good stuff.
Super talented. Did some amazing art for my article. Not for the article itself, but like inspired by the article. Just super talented, and can write a mean story as well.
We are lucky to have them.
Mm-hmm. Plague, I'm not really letting you. I just keep talking over you. Do you want to throw in anything about these, or?
I mean, I think Estrella is absolutely beautiful. I really love the look of it.
Yes.
I have not gotten a chance to fully read it yet. I did click through because I heard it was really cool. But from below, I think I read about 30. Excuse me, around 33% of the way in. Really good so far. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Some of like there's the jumps, those quote unquote jump scares.
Yeah.
Those are so, oh my god, when I first saw it, it even works on mobile, which is crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I did most of my reading on mobile, and I was like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah, it's really a testament to what you could do with this format, because even as outlandish as something like that is, it really does just work.
That was great. I immediately like reloaded the page and then like ran. I was outside talking to my neighbor, and I was just like, as I was walking away, I looked at it, and then I saw the thing and was like, oh my god, my girlfriend was inside. I just immediately reloaded it and came in and was like, look at this. She's like, wait, what's happening? I'm like, yeah, exactly. So good. Anyway, and the last one I wanted to throw out, or to shout out, is SCP-8006, which is Debris on the Tracks by The Chunk, who I didn't know their writing before this. And this is, we were talking about a sense of space, a setting in previous episodes. This perfectly encapsulates that. This one sets up this whole fucking magical world in the subway tunnels of New York City in a very not in the way that like Neil Gaiman would do it, because it's just as disgusting as the actual New York subway system is. And it's just so fucking good. It absolutely so establishes itself as like this interesting, fantastical setting, but it's also grounded in literal trash and probably feces because it's the subway.
This is the one that I haven't read that the most people have told me I need to read.
It's so fucking good. It's so good, and I don't know if this is the first thing Chunk has. I don't think so. I think Chunk has written something else on the wiki, but you know,
They're fairly new all.
But fairly new, right. This is to me, it was like when I was reading Sloth's thing for 6K. It was like, who's this? What the fuck? What? This is great. Only didn't get nearly as much attention as Sloth did. So, pay attention. I think the Chunk is going to be like a rising star, honestly.
And pay attention as well when we definitely include sloths in the next episode.
Yeah. I like nixed that one. Like, sorry, like because I wanted to talk about ones that didn't get that much attention this time.
I have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, me too.
No.
Don't you worry.
Sloths was so good, but I'm definitely going to read Debris on the Tracks.
It's so funny because when I started writing up my notes about what I wanted to say about these articles, I didn't click through to Hecatome and just immediately started writing down things I was thinking about sloths because they're both about fire. And then I was like, oh no, that's the wrong one. Oh no. Anyway, all right. Okay, so let's read some emails and then get out of here because I have an 8:30 meeting in the morning. All right. First, Harry, you want to read this first one from Fernlon?
Sure thing. Would you guys ever consider doing an episode with guests creators outside of SCP, like maybe Kane Pixels for his Backrooms work, or the Exploring series to do an episode on Warhammer 40k? Oh my god, what a bomb you just dropped there.
Why would I have the Exploring series on to talk about Warhammer 40k? I would much rather have like Luton or fucking Warrior Tier or somebody who's like been doing this for like 10 years.
I knew this is a question directly targeted to Grigor.
Would we have Kane Pixels on?
That one's really fun.
Would we have? Yes.
I like the,
yes.
I like the amazingly misjudged like power levels of that question. Would we have Kane Pixels on?
Yeah. I'm sure the only reason that Kane Pixels hasn't been on our podcast is because we hadn't specifically said he could be. Yes.
Obviously, he's a
1,000 times yes. And would we have Exploring series on to talk about? So yes, of course. I don't think I would have him on to talk about 40k. That there are other people I would talk to about that. I realize he's doing videos about that now, but but like, I mean, I've jokingly said, and not that jokingly, that I would like kill to have an episode just about Dark Souls. We haven't done that, and we've got lots of stuff about SCP to talk about, and that's what the show is about. But Fuck it.
If they fucking finished porting them all to the Switch, then maybe I'd be.
Just get a,
I'm still salty. They only
just
did one.
buy a used PS4 or something.
Yeah.
Well, PS5s are expensive, but used PS4 can't be that expensive, right? Or PS3.
It's more expensive than not buying one.
Well, fair enough. I'll wait till I get a bonus, and then I'll buy you a console so you can play this. Actually, I say that. I actually would do that.
Okay, it's fine. Well, I'll find a way. Don't.
No, somebody bought. So I was complaining. So when the PS3 came out, I bought one, and then I never used it because the PS3 is terrible. But I prefer Sony's stuff dramatically. I don't really like most of the Xbox exclusives. I'm not like a big fanboy for one or the other, but I just like
I'm a big fanboy for the one you're not mentioning.
Xbox? Switch?
Grigori. Seriously.
What?
Console video game companies, how are you confused?
Oh,
about what the
Nintendo.
other one
Oh,
is?
yeah. Everybody loves Nintendo. I always have Nintendo. Jesus. Life without Mario is not worth living. But I sold my PS3 to get a PS4, like when it was still worth, and all the PS3 games I bought and barely played. And at the time, I did not have a great respect for the Dark Souls games. So I had touched Demon Souls, but I didn't like it, and I hated it. And so it wasn't until like I don't know, 7-8 years later when I finally played Bloodborne, and then I became like fully on board with the sadomasochism that is Dark Souls, that I was like, I can't believe I've never played Demon Souls. This sucks. And a buddy of mine actually and it was when I was unemployed, just bought me a refurbished PS3 and a copy of Demon Souls, and it was just like, man, I gotta pay that forward someday.
I'm pretty sure I bought one of my friends a 3DS just so I could play A Link Between Worlds and I could talk about it with somebody.
I mean, that's a good reason. It's a good game.
Anyway, we have about 1 million emails.
Yeah, I know. All right, I'll read this one from JTKC. And I put in parentheses, I've edited this for brevity, and I want to make fun of you for yet again writing too long of an email. I cut out, no offense, JTKC, because I told you this before, I cut out like 3 or 4 paragraphs. Stop it. Thank you for sending us emails. But come on. Anyway, okay, it's been a hot second since I've been able to send it in an email for the episode, but now that I'm living by myself for uni again, I've managed to catch back up. Glad to see that the show is as good as ever. Anyways, I digress. 8K Con. This contest was a doozy for me personally. I wrote a bit of it on the author post, but I essentially had to rewrite my entry in about a week. I've heard Harry talk about his writing process and how he writes everything twice. Yep, Harry's crazy. As someone who has done that, I can say it is very effective, but I'm never doing it again. Hats off to you, Harry. It only makes your stuff more impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. That is impressive. Anyway, I'm pretty proud of my entry, and you should be. And I would like to thank the both of you for the nice comments. Generally, the reception has been so much more than I expected, and I even got some fan art. Cool. This must be how it's like to be a niche internet micro celebrity like you guys. We're not that.
Yeah.
That's so weird too when somebody points that out and you're like, you're like ranked this whatever. You're not a little author. And I'm like, I am. I'm still like the little guy. What do you mean?
Just a little guy, little birthday guy.
Yeah.
Plaguepjp.
That's right. SCP, and this is a recommendation, SCP-8600, The Hall of the Empress by Miss Lapis and Pink Pepper. Didn't know Amoni Ram needed more lore, but I'm glad it does. Nicely fills in more history on the female royalty of the Mechanite Empire, not to mention the stellar art.
Cool.
That was one of the ones I meant to read and never got around to. Sorry.
There's so many articles.
I know, but I've heard very good things about that one.
Oh, yeah, questions.
Okay, people have been looking forward to fantasy as the theme, and I'm happy for staff that no one has to ask them anymore. But some have been saying the theme was a little too broad. Funnily enough, the opposite problem for 7K. What do you guys think about this in regards to broad or narrow themes?
I have no opinions, and I think it's weird when people do, even though so
I mean, we kind of touched on this.
We did. I think genuinely though, I think every theme is as broad and or as narrow as you want it to be.
Be the
I
theme you
personally
want to
like.
see.
Yeah, I personally I preferred fantasy over luck. On a personal
wonder why.
level. Well, yeah, but just like I
I
like a
preferred
broader
luck
theme.
over fantasy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get when people say things were more narrow than less narrow. That's fine. All I give a shit about is what the results are. And for 7K and 8K, I was just really blown away by how many really stellar articles. I mean, like most KCons, but honestly, 7K and this contest, man, has some really cool shit.
Mm-hmm.
So who gives a shit if it's too narrow or too broad? If it keeps on producing these results, then whatever. And the second question, with 10K approaching, fuck you. I don't want to talk about it. Do you guys think anything special is going to happen? Someone has a cool idea where 10K's theme should just be a combination of 2 of the previous 9 themes. I think that's not very imaginative, personally.
So I've ruminated on this. I think the 10,000 contest theme should be Origin, and I think we should just see what happens there.
They'll just turn into everybody doing their ones. They'll be like, all of them will be 50,000 words.
You guys thought there were too many before? Now there'll be 1 billion of them.
Oh no.
That or the other idea I had is where this would be the worst thing ever. You have 9 micro contests with all previous themes, and then whoever wins that becomes a 10,000 proposal.
The anti-Grigori proposal will have even more contests.
Yeah, fuck that.
The sad thing is that we obviously should have combined 8 and 9 con together, because you can't combine 9 and 10 con because 10 con has to be special. At that point where the contests are so close together and there's so many entries that we really should have combined these 2 contests, but now we can't because now we're on 9, and you can't combine 9 with 10 because 10 has to be special, so we're fucked. All I know is that the next time there's a KCon, it's not going to have exactly the same rule set as the last one because we proved that it's broken.
Yeah.
Thoroughly.
I don't know that and I say this a lot. I don't know if I'm going to bother entering next time.
What was that play?
What were you saying?
I still won despite the haters.
You're still standing.
Yeah, goddamn right.
Yeah.
Okay.
More emails.
Yeah. Plague, why don't you read this one from Lux Ico?
Hello, Harry, Blank, and Gregory. My favorite 8K entry was Here to You, Mrs. Robinson by Calibold, followed by Wonderful Wedding of William Wallace Weddle by Lizard Wizard.
So that one's making it, right? That one's making it the next one,
yeah.
right? Because that's one of my favorite entries. Anyway, carry on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
Please mention them from Ica. P.S. Don't read this because it'll make the other fans jealous, but I'm your biggest and obviously favorite fan. Whoops.
It's true.
I didn't mean to read that.
No, it's okay because she intentionally misspelled my name 2 hours after we had a conversation about her saying, it's really annoying how no one spells your name right. And then she did this. So
yeah, that's Ico.
She deserves whatever she gets.
I still love tossing in your forced upon author avatar. Your
People
anglicized name. Gregory Kaplan.
People are constantly
he just gets shit on.
People are constantly telling me, they're like, wait, no, you do have an author avatar. I'm like, no, I don't. What happened was Plague and then Harry took my name and I think it's funny, and I even said do it, and then create this quote unquote character with a similar name who gets abused, beaten half to death by hog slice, and then
eaten by a giant frog.
Eaten by a giant frog, not a literal giant frog, somebody in a giant frog costume that's sentient.
He's fine.
And then the fact that it was auto almost cannibalism thing is pretty funny.
Of course, because very it's Grigori, who just loves cannibalism.
All right, I'll read this one. From Mr. Blue. Hey, you want to talk about You Are Now Entering by Oliver Memphis So Bad. I believe that this probably is Oliver Memphis then. Signed totally independent and neutral third party. What a dude.
That's one I was considering actually including too, because it's one that's not rated as well as it should be, and I really enjoyed it. I talked to Oliver a lot in the Meta Foundation chat, and I really liked Oliver's entry. It's one about a series of ways leading to a special place. Traveling trying to figure out what its deal is, and it's a really entertaining. It's almost like an episode of like an anthology series of science fiction and fantasy. It's a really good one. I really enjoyed that article.
I don't think I read that one. I'll have to
It's a good
read
one.
that. Yeah, unfortunately, there's just too many articles.
There's just so many people.
Yeah, and I just didn't have a lot of time. But again, if you only read 3 articles and you said you didn't have enough time, you're a fucking liar. Because I work 50 hours a week and I read 50.
Rory has told you. My turn?
Yeah, from Lizard Wizard.
Lizwiz. Hello, Grigori and Harry. My favorite underappreciated 8con entry is The Life and Death of Vincent Bohart. Well, there you go. We've appreciated it for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, yet again, what a great article. All right, Plague, read this one from UNC Griffin.
Hello there. I would like to recommend SCP-8282 by Oliver Memphis. You are now entering. Not too long relative to the rest of the contest, with great character dialogue and a really nice floating narrative. I mean, that's
Agreed.
2 very impartial and neutral vouchers for this article.
Well, this one we know didn't write because UNC Griffin wrote a different one.
unless Oliver sent this message as you.
Oh, that's true, maybe. Okay, so we have Akulio, I think Akulio. Hello, creative people. As you asked, I wanted to share one of my favorite entries from the 8K contest, ATM machine, which is SCP-8995 Surfs Up by Sound Chaser. Side note, this is Grigori talking. Yeah, this article, I really want. There was too many articles to mention for this podcast. 8995 is fucking great. I feel that its opening line of insane implications, followed by claustrophobic interview logs and visceral, uncomfortable imagery, all scratch the right itches for me. It was a piece that really spoke to me and left me with a feeling of visceral confusion in the best way possible. Finally, I wanted to let you guys know that your podcast helped me through some tough times and led to me discovering writing as a healthy creative outlet. Oh, awesome!
I'm glad to hear that. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, it's really honestly, feedback like that is like genuinely incredible.
There's nothing like making more people write, and it's good to hear that it's having a therapeutic effect on your life, because, I mean, I'm quite confident we can all here say that it does the same.
Yeah.
Even if in Plague's case, it may have just required him to get extra therapy.
Well, that's the thing about writing, right? Is it is very therapeutic, but it also makes you experience a lot of genuine stress that's unique, and no one else can quite understand what that is, except for artists. You know, I mean.
Yeah, and it allows you to make yourself more vulnerable.
That's right.
To attack.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Plague, you want to read this last one from Quaker Buttonnose?
Congratulations on getting the X140 slot, Grigori. If anyone deserves to get the Davite number, it's you. I haven't read 8888 yet, so I'll have to get to it before the next episode. It sounds like a lot of fun from what I've heard.
It is.
My choice for an underrated 8K con entry is SCP-8041, Supreme Nothing by Termite. It's about a Foundation department created to investigate the origin of the anomalous, trying to figure out why there's no evidence of anomalies before the 1500s. It has a very academic feeling to it, and a fun mystery too. There's a fading text gimmick that I wasn't a huge fan of, but it's overall a very neat little article. I also liked Dreams of an Empire Lost by Sobin, which he deleted after the contest so he could rewrite it as a tale series. Definitely had problems, but the prose and the awesome setting still made it enjoyable for me. Did any of you read it before it was deleted? If you did, what did you think of it? I have not read that one.
I didn't read either of these. I also Termite.
Yeah, it could either be Termite or Termite. Yeah, I
don't think I ever even had that one open. It looks interesting.
Yeah,
no, I didn't read either.
I mean,
I did read Dreams of an Empire Lost by Sobek. I quite liked it. I mean, it did have some problems, I agree, but I'm excited to hear that he's going to rewrite it as a tale series, because I think it would be it's got a lot of potential, genuinely.
Very good idea. If you take something, you could extend it out. Get a little more fanfare around it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to hear that. I was sad to see that it got deleted. I understand, that he was not totally satisfied with it, which is, that's fair. But I'm excited about that. I didn't know he was doing it as a tale series. That's really good. I did not read 8041, but it sounds fun. I don't know if I like the idea of the fading text gimmick either. I don't even know what it is, but it sounds like an interesting idea.
I literally restricted myself to, I will start by reading all the ones by everybody I know and all the people who are friends with me and people who've read my stuff and people that I essentially, like, as a human being, owe it to them to look at. And that fucking took all my time. Because you know what? Apparently, when you spend like 3 years on this, you end up knowing fucking everybody.
Yeah,
Christ, I'm like, oh my god, there's how many people on this list that I really cannot not read?
The ones that I read that were not by people I either recognized or people that I talked to regularly were because of that channel in the Discord where it was just a KCON chat and people were just talking about different stuff and somebody would say, hey, this one's really good. Like the one that was Eleanor whatever goes to therapy. I don't know if you read that one.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm real glad I stopped doing what I was doing and just read that one because I was like, wow. This is real good.
It was Uncanyons?
Mm-hmm. Uncanyon, yeah. I forget what number they ended up getting, but wow, real good. All right, well, that is it for us. So, if you have an email, please send it to simplycreativepeople@gmail.com. It does not have to be on subject. It can be about just about anything. We will be back probably next week or possibly the week after. We're going to do a different AK episode where we talk about those ones that we can really like wax poetic about that we, the
ones that did well. That
did very well, but we still want to talk about. Yeah. Show's Twitter is at SIMCREAT. And my Twitter is at Gregory Carpet.
At Harry Blank SCP.
plaguepjp.
PJP. Happy birthday, Plague PJP.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
No, it's always good.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason you've been on 5 times, 6 times.
Yeah.
It's because you're just like so witty and charming. No, that's true. I said that sarcastically, but
wow.
That's true.
Wow.
Yeah, and we don't usually say this stuff, but hey, if you want to go on the show page on Spotify my podcast / Simply Creative People, you can support the show and tell other people about the show, please, and we can keep growing this other show. All right. Thank you. Also, very sorry that it's been almost 3 months to the day since we had an episode.
Been busy.
8K is really stressful. Contests are really stressful. I've been working way too much, and also I got a contracting gig writing for something I can't really talk that much about. So it's been hard to find time. But we'll be better about it. Tell a joke.
I'm actually at a loss for one, surprisingly.
That's pretty good.